Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Board of Directors meeting for the city for December 3rd, 2018. I'd like to welcome everyone that's here with us in attendance as we go about doing the city's business. Let me first ask our city clerk if she would read the roll, and let's see who's here.
Director Hendricks, Director Richardson, Director Peck, Director Hines, Director Wright, Director Wyrick, Director Compuris, Director Fortson, Director Adcock, Vice Mayor Webb, Mayor Stodler.
Here. Let me call on our city director, Lance Hines, for our invocation, please.
Thank you. Please bow your heads. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for letting us be here today to gather and take care of the business of our wonderful city and all of its residents. Please, we ask to seek your will in everything we do and lift you up in the glory of your name. In your Son's name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Amen. If you would, please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we have a couple of presentations this evening. Let me introduce those. First of all, one of the things that the city has done over the last, I guess, year and a half or so, is we have really reached out to the diversity in our community, particularly our Hispanic-speaking peoples that make up about 7.5% of our population, and have really worked to try and embrace them as our friends and neighbors. And in doing that, one of the things that we have done that I think is a really wonderful opportunity and an idea that has come about was to be able to assist them by understanding the driving laws of the state of Arkansas and to teach those in Spanish. And we have reached out very earnestly to try and find police officers and to hire police officers who are bilingual that speak Spanish. One of our outstanding police officers, Sergeant Jacob Tobler, is here, who has been really ramrodding that program, and he, along with Marcela Garcia, and I think Chief Folk is with us as well, and we are going to issue some certificates for the individuals who have completed that course of learning the laws of the state of Arkansas and driving many of our Spanish-speaking people. I'm going to ask them to hang around and to be within earshot, at least, of this meeting, because after we issue these certificates, we're going to have a presentation by the esteemed Consul General of our Mexican Consulate, the Honorable Rodolfo Quintanillan, who's here with us as well. So I wanted to let everybody know that. Don't leave once you get your certificates. So if the folks will join me at the podium, please.
Mayor, members of the board, I'm happy to present these participants in our Spanish driving law class. This is the 7th time that we've done this, and we had a good turnout this time, and a lot of them, the people that were able to participate this time, have come tonight to receive their certificates. So, and I appreciate your time and support in this. First, we would like to present the certificate to David Vasquez. Desiree Alvarez.
Don't leave.
Edwin Lopez.
Don't leave.
Just come up here. Congratulations.
Elizabeth Romero.
Congratulations.
Herman Lopez. Gladys Pascual. Guadalupe Urbina. Señora.
Congratulations. Thank you.
Juan Barrera Espitia.
Congratulations.
Juanita Arabelli Bautista.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Lorena Ruano.
Congratulations.
Maria Bermudez.
Congratulations, Maria.
Congratulations.
Maria Victoria Serrano.
Congratulations.
Rosalia Galvan. Está bien.
Congratulations.
Samuel Estrada.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Silvina Morales. Nada, gracias.
Congratulations.
Sol de los Santos.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Teresa Ramírez. Ujú.
Congratulations.
Kiara Ramos. Miriam Rosas. Is that everyone, Maricela? Okay. Thank you very much. Also, thank you. While I'm up here, I'd also like to take a moment to present a separate award to Mayor Stodola and City Manager Bruce Moore that was given to the City of Little Rock last week by Arkansas United, which is an organization that serves immigrant families. The City of Little Rock received on Friday night the Change Champion Award of 2018 from Arkansas United in recognition of the Little Rock Identification Card program that was launched this summer and other efforts that the city has done in support of the immigrant community. And your support, Mayor Stodola and Mr. Moore, is greatly appreciated.
Okay, thank you all so very much, and let me call on our Council General for his comments now. Rodolfo?
Muchas gracias. Muy buenas noches tengan todos ustedes. Good evening to everyone. Thank you for having me at this Board of Directors meeting. It is an honor. As all we know, in a few days, Mayor Mark Stodola's administration ends. Mayor Stodola was the first elected officer I had the pleasure to meet upon my arrival to this capital city on June 2016. I remember very well his welcoming remarks. Rodolfo, I want to work with you. with the Mexican community, with Mexico. You can count on me and with the city of Little Rock 24/7. Since then, dear friends, we have been working together respectfully and professionally in a myriad of issues regarding public safety, economic development, and quality of life. Mexican consular staff always participate in the sessions of the Working Together Committee in the Southwest neighborhood. We jointly foster multicultural initiatives and diversity promotion, civic and cultural awareness, access to better education and health services, support to the growing business Hispanic community, building trust between law enforcement and the Hispanic community. The Spanish driver lessons and the Citizen Academy by Little Rock Police Department are just brief examples of the efforts made during this period. Together, we invite other foreign consulates to provide consular services to their nationals that reside in this city, so Little Rock kindly hosts them at the Southwest Community Center. Mayor Stodola, you have been a key actor to establish and maintain good dialogue with the Spanish-speaking community as a whole and a bridge of understanding between our community. You have been an authentic trailblazer, recognizing the multiple contributions of the Spanish-speaking community to the capital city. The Little Rock identification card is just an evidence of your mission to bring all of Little Rock's residents together as one community. Mayor Stodola, esteemed friend, it has been an honor working with you and all your staff. We really appreciate your efforts to make Little Rock a more dynamic, innovative, and inclusive city. Thank you for all your work and our best wishes to you and your family. Thank you very much. Mayor Stodola, I will ask that you can come here. I have a special recognition to you, but before that, I will ask my lovely wife to give you a special handmade pistol pin. Please, Mayor Stodola. Patricia. This pin is made by Patricia, and it has the three colors of the Mexican flag and the national symbol of Mexicans.
Something so humble, but by heart.
Thank you so much.
And this is only the first gift to you. You deserve a lot of gifts. The another one, Patricia, can you help me con la bolsa? Yes. And we would like to give you this, Mayor Stodola. This is a special recognition. It said in Spanish, Consulado de México en Little Rock otorga el presente reconocimiento a Mark Stodola, alcalde de la ciudad de Little Rock, por su visión, liderazgo y logros en el crecimiento económico de Little Rock, con inclusión, diversidad multicultural e igualdad de oportunidades. Little Rock, Arkansas, a 3 de diciembre de 2018, Rodolfo Quilantán Arenas, cónsul de México. Aquí tengo, I have here the translation in English. I know for the speaking English people. I know. The Consulate of Mexico presents these particular recognitions to the Mayor Mark Stodola in recognition of your vision, leadership, and achievements to boost economic growth in Little Rock with inclusion, multicultural diversity, and equal opportunities. Thank you very much, Mayor.
Thank you, Rodolfo.
Muchas gracias a todos ustedes, Board of Directors. Thank you very much.
Ustedes pueden venir con nosotros para sacar una foto en la escalera.
Well, Mr. Counsel General, I'm humbled by the recognition and want to thank you for all you've done to embrace our city as well and to make it one. and to help with all the citizens of our great state and our great city to show the love and affection that we have for humankind, and you have done a great job to do that. The programs that we've done here in the city could not have been done without the help and support of my colleagues, and I want to thank them as well for their support and their endorsement of the importance of what we do to make sure that we reach out and extend our love and appreciation to our citizens. Thank you so much. Okay, well, thank you. Quite surprised. I didn't know that's what we were going to be doing tonight. Yes, Director Hancock.
I would like to ask the chief to please go and have a picture made with the. Thank you.
Okay, we can now move on to our agenda. The first thing is a withdrawal of ordinance number 11. That's the rental inspection. I believe there's a little bit more work that still needs to be done on that. Is there a motion to withdraw that from the agenda? I heard a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor indicate by saying aye. Opposed, say nay. We will remove that from our agenda. We can now move on to our consent agenda, items 1 through 5, and let me ask our clerk to read those items, please.
The consent agenda consists of a resolution to authorize the city manager to enter into a contract with P. Jeffrey Hoggard, PA, in an amount not to exceed $35,000 to provide for governmental affairs and consulting services and for the purposes. A resolution to execute a lease agreement and any other related documents with SBA Communications Corporation for the lease of a cell tower on city property located at 8610 Colonel Glenn Road and for the purposes. A resolution to authorize the city manager to execute a contract with Motorola for a total amount of $4,786,244, including taxes and a 20% contingency for the purchase of Motorola's Premier One computer-aided dispatch and Premier One mobile system for the Little Rock Police Department and for the purposes. A resolution to appropriate up to $2,368,000 from the city's 3/8 cent capital sales and compensating use tax proceeds to the Central Arkansas Technology Park Authority and for the purposes. A resolution to direct that in January 2019 a forum structure be created to study the form of government for the city of Little Rock, Arkansas and for the purposes. That concludes the consent agenda.
There's a motion and a second to adopt the consent agenda. Director Richardson, you have a comment or question, please?
Yes, Mayor, thank you. Bruce, Tom, I thought at some point in time we sponsored a resolution to require these dollars to be placed in locally owned banks, and is that correct, Tom? I know you and I talked about this last week.
Director Richardson, I know that was discussed at one time. I could not find anything that declared that, and I think it would be a violation of the Interstate Commerce Clause.
Okay, thank you. Another question, Bruce, on resolution number 4, do we have any description of the uses of these funds? I know in the past they've used these funds to utilize these funds for property acquisition. Do we have any kind of explanation beyond what's listed in the resolution in terms of how these funds are going to be used?
Director Richardson, you're correct. That's the intent to go into phase 2 on acquiring additional property.
And the balance of what's owed to the tech park is what, about 13 million, 12 million?
We can get that. It was 22 million over the 10-year period. So this will basically take them, will be fully paid at this point, then what they accumulate over the next 3 years.
And the last question, I know at some point when we talked about establishing this and presenting this to the community, we mentioned that we were going to utilize these funds for private sector investment. Have we been successful in attracting any private sector dollars to go along with these public dollars?
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, we can get you a detailed report, and we probably need to have them come here soon. But I think we've seen a significant amount of private development investment into the tech park area.
Well, I agree with your point. I think we do, Mayor. I think we do need to have them come down here for a presentation so that we can be fully aware and fully informed about the progress and respective timelines, how we're going to move forward with this establishment of this park.
Sure. We'll extend an invitation to have them outline for us phase 2.
Thank you, Bruce. Thank you, Mayor.
Very good. Director Pierce.
Just just to beg the board to indulgence. On number 5, I want to reread the letter that I sent y'all 6 months ago, just because I want everybody to know, at least when we pass this, what our intent is. And the letter said, "Dear Board of Directors, I'm writing to tell you that I will oppose Director Hendricks' orders next Tuesday dealing with the makeup of the Board of Directors. My main objective is not the proposal itself, but the method she's used to arrive at the proposal. I've been part of 2 changes in our form of government during my time on the board that were initiated by Future Little Rock and Vision Little Rock. Director Hendricks' proposal is the product of a small group of confidants, and because of a lack of critical component of the prior procedures, prolonged study, and extensive public input. We all serve at the pleasure of the people. It is their right and responsibility to decide the form of government. It is our duty to offer a procedure or format where their opinions of our citizens can be heard. If Director Hendricks' proposal passes, so be it. If it does not, I will offer a resolution that the first action taken by the new Board of Directors and the new mayor in 2019 will be to decide on a process where this issue can be fully vetted. If the study group feels modifications of our present form of government are indicated, like Vision Little Rock, or a new form of government is appropriate, like Future Little Rock, then these recommendations should be offered to the community in 2019 for their consideration. This will be well before the next election in 2020 and allow the citizens the time to decide if they want to offer themselves for public service." And I just wanted people to understand why I think this is important. We serve at the pleasure of the people, but the people need to have an opportunity to be fully vetted. And I wanted us all to be on the same page when we start this in 2019. Thank you.
Director Richardson.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Dean. Very rarely do I disagree with my good friend, Dean. I think Director Hendricks' legislation wasn't to actually change the form of government. I thought it was to put it to the voters and allow the voters to decide how they're going to be governed. And while it may not have had the same kind of planning process that both Future Little Rock and Vision Little Rock had, even those planning processes were limited to a select group of individuals that certainly didn't have the input or involvement of the entire citizenry of our city. So I just wanted to make that point known, that I supported that legislation because I thought that I didn't have an opinion on whether or not we should go one way or the other. I thought my opinion and my support was centered on the fact that we present this to the citizens of Little Rock and let them decide how they want to be governed.
And this is not, both of those processes involved hundreds of people. It involved multiple hearings, multiple opportunities for citizens to propose opportunities. It involved looking at other communities our size in different parts of the country. It brought all those things back and let people look at them. And that's the difference. And Irma's proposal was a proposal that she thought had merit. And I don't doubt whether our form of government should be changed or not, but I think it needs to be well aired. I think everybody should have time to consider what's going on, and that's the reason I offered that.
Okay. Director Richardson.
I know, Mayor. The only difference, Dean, between Irma's proposal and those processes that you just listed, Irma's proposal was to simply put it on the ballot for a general election. Both Future Little Rock and Vision Little Rock, they call for special elections, which I think it costs to do those, and I think it also, normally special election doesn't have the entire involvement of the community, or at least as many as we want to. So I think that's why I was supportive of that, because it wasn't going to cost us anything. And I think it made it more likely or more possible for us to have greater involvement from our citizenry. So that's why I was supportive of that. And I'm like you, I don't have any say. Either way it goes. I don't have a preference, but I have a real strong preference to present these types of ideas to as many of our citizens as possible. And both those special elections didn't do that. And those special elections cost us money. And Director Hendricks, Irma's proposal was to just put it on the general ballot, and that's all. And that's why I was supportive of that. And like I said, very rarely do you and I disagree on things, but that one, we're going to disagree on that one.
All right, very good. Thank you both. That's completes the discussion on the consent agenda. There's been a motion and a second to adopt it. All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed say nay. The consent agenda is adopted. I have no cards for citizen communication tonight, so we'll move on to the grouped items. There's one item that was previously on the items to read separately, and I believe it's ordinance number, it's ordinance number 30. And if there's no objection, we can add that to the grouped item as well. Then we want to take a look at that. Director Wyrick, I think, had a concern about it at the time of our agenda meeting, but has told me she's satisfied, and we can group that on our grouped items. Okay, if they're without objection, then Madam Clerk, if you'll read items 6 through 26 and ordinance number 30.
An ordinance to amend Chapter 8, Article 1, subsection 8-2A and B of the Little Rock Revised Code of Ordinances of 1988 to provide for the adoption by reference of the 2018 International Property Maintenance Code to declare an emergency and for the purposes. An ordinance to approve a plan, zoning development, establish a planned commercial district titled Lot 6, the Village at Rawling Road, revised short form PCD, located south of the southeast corner of Chenal Parkway and Rawling Road, Little Rock, Arkansas, amending the official zoning map of the city of Little Rock, Arkansas, and for the purposes. An ordinance to approve a plan, zoning development, establish a planned residential district titled 1417 Kavanaugh Boulevard, revised short form PDR, located at 1417 Kavanaugh Boulevard, Little Rock, Arkansas, amending the official zoning map of the city of Little Rock, Arkansas, and for the purposes. An ordinance to approve a plan, zoning development, establish a plan office district titled New Water System, short form PDO, located at 7915 Highway 300, Little Rock, Arkansas, amending the official zoning map of the city of Little Rock, Arkansas, and for the purposes. An ordinance to reclassify property located in the city of Little Rock, Arkansas, amending the official zoning map of the city of Little Rock, Arkansas, and for the purposes. An ordinance to condemn certain structures in the city of Little Rock, Arkansas with structural fire and health hazards, to provide for summary abatement procedures, to direct city staff to take such action as is necessary to raise and remove said structures, to declare an emergency and for the purposes. An ordinance to declare it impractical and unfeasible to bid, to authorize the city manager to extend a contract with the Arkansas Municipal League Municipal Vehicle Program at a total cost of $950,000 to administer a self-insurance program for the city of Little Rock's motor vehicle liability insurance and for the purposes. An ordinance to grant a franchise for the use of city right-of-way to place a City Post smart kiosk at 420 West Markham Street, pursuant to a memorandum of understanding referenced in Little Rock, Arkansas, ordinance number 21,588 of June the 19th of 2018, to direct that a copy of this franchise agreement be placed as an exhibit to the memorandum of understanding and for the purposes. An ordinance to grant a franchise for the use of city right-of-way to place a City Post smart kiosk at 118 East Markham Street, pursuant to a memorandum of understanding referenced in Little Rock, Arkansas, ordinance number 21,588, to direct that a copy of this franchise agreement be placed as an exhibit to the memorandum of understanding and for the purposes. An ordinance to grant a franchise for the use of city right-of-way to place a City Post smart kiosk at 404 President Clinton Avenue, pursuant to a memorandum of understanding referenced in Little Rock, Arkansas, ordinance number 21,588, to direct that a copy of this franchise agreement be placed in as exhibit to the memorandum of understanding and for the purposes. An ordinance to grant a franchise for the use of city right-of-way to place a City Post smart kiosk at 205 South Main Street, pursuant to a memorandum of understanding referenced in Little Rock, Arkansas, ordinance number 21,588, to direct that a copy of this franchise agreement be placed in as an exhibit to the memorandum of understanding and for the purposes. An ordinance to grant a franchise for the use of city right-of-way to place a City Post smart kiosk at 324 South Main Street, pursuant to a memorandum of understanding referenced in Little Rock, Arkansas, ordinance number 21,588, to direct that a copy of this franchise agreement be placed as an exhibit to the memorandum of understanding and for the purposes. An ordinance to grant a franchise for the use of city right-of-way to place a City Post smart Kiosk at 413 South Main Street, pursuant to a memorandum of understanding referenced in Little Rock, Arkansas, ordinance number 21,588, to direct that a copy of this franchise agreement be placed as an exhibit to the memorandum of understanding and for the purposes. An ordinance to grant a franchise for the use of city right-of-way to place a City Post Smart Kiosk at 1025 President Clinton Avenue, pursuant to a memorandum of understanding referenced in Little Rock, Arkansas, ordinance number 21,588, to direct that a copy of this franchise agreement be placed as an exhibit to the memorandum of understanding and for other purposes. An ordinance to grant a franchise for the use of city right-of-way to place a City Post Smart Kiosk at 419 West Capitol Avenue, pursuant to a memorandum of understanding referenced in Little Rock, Arkansas, ordinance number 21,588, to direct that a copy of this franchise agreement be placed as an exhibit to the memorandum of understanding and for other purposes. An ordinance to grant a franchise for the use of city right-of-way to place a City Post Smart Kiosk at 424 East Markham Street, pursuant to a memorandum of understanding referenced in Little Rock, Arkansas, ordinance number 21,588, to direct that a copy of this franchise agreement be placed in its exhibit to the memorandum of understanding and for other purposes. An ordinance to grant a franchise for the use of city right-of-way to place a City Post Smart Kiosk at 522 South Main Street, pursuant to a memorandum of understanding referenced in Little Rock, Arkansas, ordinance number 21,588, to direct that a copy of this franchise agreement be placed as an exhibit to the memorandum of understanding and for other purposes. An ordinance to grant a franchise for the use of city right-of-way to place a City Post Smart Kiosk at 1205 South Main Street, pursuant to a memorandum of understanding referenced in Little Rock, Arkansas, ordinance number 21,588, to direct that a copy of this franchise agreement be placed as an exhibit to the memorandum of understanding and for the purposes. Pursuant? Okay. I'm sorry. I've said it wrong all this time. Pursuant. Thank you, Tom. It's that southern accent. What can I say? Could have waited till I finished the first one. An ordinance to grant a franchise for the use of city right-of-way to place a City Post Smart Kiosk at 1502 South Main Street, pursuant to a memorandum of understanding referenced in Little Rock, Arkansas, ordinance number 21,588, to direct that a copy of this franchise agreement be placed as an exhibit to the memorandum of understanding and for other purposes. An ordinance to dispense with the requirement of competitive selection process and to authorize the city manager to extend the AT&T Plexar phone contract for one additional year for an amount not to exceed $88,987.20 plus applicable taxes and fees, to allow for the testing of new devices and installation to complete the upgrade of the new Voice over Internet Protocol phone system and for other purposes. An ordinance to approve a plan zoning development, establish a planned commercial district titled Timmons Conference Center, revised long form PCD, located at 10,915 Stagecoach Road, Little Rock, Arkansas, amending the official zoning map of the city of Little Rock, Arkansas, and for other purposes. First reading.
There's a motion and a second to suspend the rules and place these ordinances on second reading. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Second reading, please.
Hold that thought.
We're going to give you the opportunity to say it again.
Well, y'all got me messed up on that word. I'm sorry. I got to get organized again. Okay. An ordinance to amend Chapter 8, Article 1, Subsection 8-2A and B of the Little Rock Revised Code of Ordinances to provide for the adoption by reference of the 2018 International Property Maintenance Code to declare an emergency. An ordinance to approve a planned zoning development, establish a planned commercial district titled Lot 6, the Village at Rawling Road, revised short form PCD, located south of the southeast corner of Chenal Parkway and Rawling Road. An ordinance to approve a planned zoning development, establish a planned residential district titled 1417 Kavanaugh Boulevard, revised short form PDR, located at 1417 Kavanaugh Boulevard, Little Rock, Arkansas. Okay. An ordinance to approve a planned zone development, establish a planned office district titled New Water Systems, short form PDO, located at 7915 Highway 300. An ordinance to reclassify property located in the city of Little Rock, Arkansas. An ordinance to condemn certain structures in the city of Little Rock, Arkansas as structural fire and health hazards, to provide for summary abatement procedures, to direct city staff to take such action as is necessary to raise and remove said structures, to declare an emergency. An ordinance to declare it impractical and unfeasible to bid, to authorize the city manager to extend the contract with the Arkansas Municipal League Municipal Vehicle Program at a total cost of $950,000, to administer a self-insurance program for the City of Little Rock's motor vehicle liability insurance. An ordinance to grant a franchise for the use of city right-of-way to place a City Post Smart Kiosk at 420 West Markham Street, pursuant to a memorandum of understanding referenced in the Little Rock, Arkansas ordinance number 21,588, to direct that a copy of this franchise agreement be placed as an exhibit to the memorandum of understanding. An ordinance to grant a franchise for the use of city right-of-way to place a City Post Smart Kiosk at 118 South Markham Street, pursuant to a memorandum of understanding referenced in Little Rock, Arkansas ordinance number 21,588, to direct that a copy of this franchise agreement be placed as an exhibit to the memorandum of understanding. An ordinance to grant a franchise for the use of city right-of-way to place a City Post Smart Kiosk at 404 President Clinton Avenue, pursuant to a memorandum of understanding referenced in the Little Rock, Arkansas ordinance number 21,588, to direct that a copy of this franchise agreement be placed as an exhibit to the memorandum of understanding. An ordinance to grant a franchise for the use of city right-of-way to place a City Post Smart Kiosk at 205 South Main Street, pursuant to a memorandum of understanding referenced in Little Rock, Arkansas ordinance number 21,588, to direct that a copy of this franchise agreement be placed as an exhibit to the memorandum of understanding. An ordinance to grant a franchise for the use of city right-of-way to place a City Post Smart Kiosk at 324 South Main Street, pursuant to a memorandum of understanding referenced in Little Rock, Arkansas ordinance number 21,588, to direct that a copy of this franchise agreement be placed as an exhibit to the memorandum of understanding. An ordinance to grant a franchise for the use of city right-of-way to place a City Post Smart Kiosk at 413 South Main Street, pursuant to a memorandum of understanding referenced in Little Rock, Arkansas ordinance number 21,588, to direct that a copy of this franchise agreement be placed as an exhibit to the memorandum of understanding. An ordinance to grant a franchise for the use of city right-of-way to place a City Post Smart Kiosk at 1025 President Clinton Avenue, pursuant to a memorandum of understanding referenced in Little Rock, Arkansas ordinance number 21,588, to direct that a copy of this franchise agreement be placed as an exhibit to the memorandum of understanding. An ordinance to grant a franchise for the use of city right-of-way to place a City Post Smart Kiosk at 419 West Capitol Avenue, pursuant to a memorandum of understanding referenced in Little Rock, Arkansas ordinance number 21,588, to direct that a copy of this franchise agreement be placed as an exhibit to the memorandum of understanding. An ordinance to grant a franchise for the use of city right-of-way to place a City Post Smart Kiosk at 424 East Markham Street, pursuant to a memorandum of understanding referenced in Little Rock, Arkansas ordinance number 21,588, to direct that a copy of this franchise agreement be placed as an exhibit to the memorandum of understanding. An ordinance to grant a franchise for the use of city right-of-way to place a City Post Smart Kiosk at 522 South Main Street, pursuant to a memorandum of understanding referenced in Little Rock, Arkansas ordinance number 21,588, to direct that a copy of this franchise agreement be placed as an exhibit to the memorandum of understanding. An ordinance to grant a franchise for the use of city right-of-way to place a City Post Smart Kiosk at 1205 South Main Street, pursuant to a memorandum of understanding referenced in Little Rock, Arkansas ordinance number 21,588, to direct that a copy of this franchise agreement be placed as an exhibit to the memorandum of understanding. An ordinance to approve a plan zoning development, establish a plan commercial district titled Timmons Conference Center, revised long form PCD, located at 10,915 Stagecoach Road. Second reading.
We suspend the rules and place on third and final reading.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to suspend the rules and place these ordinances on third and final reading. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Third and final reading, please.
Wait just a minute. I missed two ordinances on second reading. I'm sorry. An ordinance to grant a franchise for the use of city right-of-way to place a City Post Smart Kiosk at 1502 South Main Street, pursuant to a memorandum of understanding referenced in Little Rock, Arkansas ordinance number 21,588, to direct that a copy of this franchise agreement be placed as an exhibit to the memorandum of understanding. An ordinance to dispense with the requirement of competitive selection process, to authorize the city manager to extend the AT&T Plexar phone contract for one additional year for an amount not to exceed $88,987.20 plus applicable taxes and fees, to allow for the testing of new devices and installation to complete the upgrade of the new voice-over Internet Protocol phone system. Second reading.
Move to suspend the rules and place these two items on third and final reading.
Second.
Motion and a second to suspend the rules and place these two additional items on third and final reading. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Third and final reading, please.
Yes. An ordinance to amend Chapter 8, Article 1 of Subsection 8-2 of A and B of the Little Rock Revised Code of Ordinances to provide for the adoption by reference of the 2018 International Property Maintenance Code to declare an emergency. An ordinance to approve a plan zoning development, establish a planned commercial district titled Lot 6, the Village at Rawling Road, revised short form PCD, located south of the southeast corner of Chenal Parkway and Rawling Road. An ordinance to approve a plan zoning development, establish a planned residential district titled 1417 Kavanaugh Boulevard, revised short form PDR, located at 1417 Kavanaugh Boulevard. An ordinance to approve a plan zoning development, establish a plan office district titled New Water System, short form PDO, located at 7915 Highway 300. An ordinance to reclassify property located in the city of Little Rock, Arkansas. An ordinance to condemn certain structures in the city of Little Rock, Arkansas with structural fire and health hazards, to provide for summary abatement procedures, to direct city staff to take such action as is necessary to raise and remove said structures, to declare an emergency. An ordinance declared impractical and unfeasible to bid, to authorize the city manager to extend the contract with the Arkansas Municipal League Municipal Vehicle Program at a total cost of $950,000 to administer a self-insurance program for the city of Little Rock's motor vehicle liability insurance. An ordinance to grant a franchise for the use of the city right-of-way to place a City Post smart kiosk at 420 West Markham Street pursuant to a memorandum of understanding referenced in Little Rock, Arkansas, ordinance number 21,588, to direct that a copy of this franchise agreement be placed as an exhibit to the memorandum of understanding. An ordinance to grant a franchise for the use of city right-of-way to place a City Post smart kiosk at 118 East Markham Street pursuant to a memorandum of understanding referenced in Little Rock, Arkansas, ordinance number 21,588, to direct that a copy of this franchise agreement be placed as an exhibit to the memorandum of understanding. An ordinance to grant franchise for the use of city right-of-way to place a City Post smart kiosk at 404 President Clinton Avenue pursuant to a memorandum of understanding referenced in Little Rock, Arkansas, ordinance number 21,588, to direct that a copy of this franchise agreement be placed as an exhibit to the memorandum of understanding. An ordinance to grant a franchise for the use of city right-of-way to place a City Post smart kiosk at 205 South Main Street pursuant to a memorandum of understanding referenced in Little Rock, Arkansas, ordinance number 21,588, to direct that a copy of this franchise agreement be placed as an exhibit to the memorandum of understanding. An ordinance to grant a franchise for the use of city right-of-way to place a City Post smart kiosk at 324 South Main Street, pursuant to a memorandum of understanding referenced in Little Rock, Arkansas, ordinance number 21,588, to direct that a copy of this franchise agreement be placed as an exhibit to the memorandum of understanding. An ordinance to grant a franchise for the use of city right-of-way to place a City Post smart kiosk at 413 South Main Street, pursuant to a memorandum of understanding referenced in Little Rock, Arkansas, ordinance number 21,588, to direct that a copy of this franchise agreement be placed as an exhibit to the memorandum of understanding. An ordinance to grant a franchise for the use of city right-of-way to place a City Post smart kiosk at 1025 President Clinton Avenue, pursuant to a memorandum of understanding referenced in Little Rock, Arkansas, ordinance number 21,588, to direct that a copy of this franchise agreement be placed as an exhibit to the memorandum of understanding. An ordinance to grant a franchise for the use of city right-of-way to place a City Post smart kiosk at 419 West Capitol Avenue, pursuant to a memorandum of understanding referenced in Little Rock, Arkansas, ordinance number 21,588, to direct that a copy of this franchise agreement be placed as an exhibit to the memorandum of understanding. An ordinance to grant a franchise for the use of city right-of-way to place a City Post smart kiosk at 424 East Markham Street, pursuant to a memorandum of understanding referenced in Little Rock, Arkansas, ordinance number 21,588, to direct that a copy of this franchise agreement be placed as an exhibit to the memorandum of understanding. An ordinance to grant a franchise for the use of city right-of-way to place a City Post smart kiosk at 522 South Main Street, pursuant to a memorandum of understanding referenced in Little Rock, Arkansas, ordinance number 21,588, to direct that a copy of this franchise agreement be placed as an exhibit to the memorandum of understanding. An ordinance to grant a franchise for the use of city right-of-way to place a City Post Smart Kiosk at 1205 South Main Street pursuant to a memorandum of understanding referenced in Little Rock, Arkansas, ordinance number 21,588, to direct that a copy of this franchise agreement be placed as an exhibit to the memorandum of understanding. An ordinance to grant a franchise for the use of city right-of-way to place a City Post Smart Kiosk at 1502 South Main Street pursuant to a memorandum of understanding referenced in Little Rock, Arkansas, ordinance number 21,588, to direct that a copy of this franchise agreement be placed as an exhibit to the memorandum of understanding. An ordinance to dispense with the requirement of competitive selection process and to authorize the city manager to extend the AT&T Plexar phone contract for one additional year for an amount not to exceed $88,987.20 plus applicable taxes and fees to allow for the testing of new devices and installation to complete the upgrade of the new Voice over Internet Protocol phone system. An ordinance to approve a planned zoning development, establish a planned commercial district titled Timmons Conference Center, revised long form PCD, located at 10,915 Stagecoach Road, third and final reading.
Okay, we've had all three readings. Any questions? All in favor of the passage of these ordinances indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. The ordinances have passed. And on the emergency clause for ordinance number six, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. That emergency clause is also passed. And on ordinance number 11, the emergency clause on ordinance 11, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Oh, excuse me. I'm looking at that one's been withdrawn, yes. On ordinance number 12, all in favor of the emergency clause on ordinance number 12 indicate by saying aye.
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 Opposed, say nay.
Aye.
That emergency clause is also passed.
Nay.
No, I said aye to the aye. I was a little late. It was nay. I didn't say anything.
1 second, please. All right, that takes care of the emergency clauses. Yes, yes, go ahead. Turn your mic on, please.
Since these people have sat here and listened to all these readings of a City Post Smart Kiosk, would you take a couple minutes and explain to everyone what those are, please? Because I'm sure those people at home and these people are sitting here wondering after listening to 100 times what we're doing.
These are they're smart kiosks, which means that they have internet capabilities on them, which will help to expand our internet coverage in the locations, all outside, up and down the heart of our downtown area. They're community bulletin boards, so they'll have approximately 20 different ways to index community events, cultural events, sporting events, special activities or entertainment that's going on in our city. It'll also be able to translate in about 50 different languages. It has 911 capabilities on it. It has cameras that are almost 365. So it'll be a great security enhancement as well for our downtown. And it'll allow small businesses to be identified and to have their information put on there for free. And there'll also be an opportunity if they wish to get more expanded coverage to be able to have that as well. So it's all part of being a smart city and pushing us forward in allowing our citizens to have a great way to interact. Probably one of the most fun things for those of us around my age, you might remember you were able to go into one of these little camera booths with your friend and get your picture taken and together. And now you can do that. Now you can do that as a selfie on the community kiosk itself, and put your email in there, and it'll send the picture to you immediately.
Mayor,
So yes,
I wanted the board and the public to know that both you and Bruce made tremendous efforts to get me to agree we didn't have to do separate ordinances. Unfortunately, when we wrote the contract, the idea of just being able to attach the exhibits was a good one, but I used the wording, and the mayor indicated that we needed to go ahead and get these approved. I'm going to work with the company and see if we can't modify our agreement so these can simply be done administratively and added as exhibits to the contract for the placement.
Very good. We hope that this is a great success and we'll be able to add more. There have been some other cities. Kansas City was one of the first cities to implement this about 2 years ago. I went up there and kicked the tires and checked it out, and we're excited about it. And they got in 25 to begin with, and now they're putting another 120 in. So we're excited to have it come to Little Rock. And now we can get the rest of them in. I see some of our people there have been working with us on this. Thank you for being here. Okay. And thank you, Mr. Carpenter. I know Mr. Moore and I argued with you vociferously about whether we needed to have 13 of these separately listed, but we lost and you won on that one. Okay. We can now move on to the separate items. And let me ask for a reading on resolution number 27.
A resolution to authorize the city manager to enter into contracts to provide prevention and intervention and treatment funds for after-school, out-of-school, time-positive prevention programs for 2019, endorsed by the Commission on Children, Youth, and Families, and for the purposes.
Okay, we've had the first reading, or the only reading of that, and I know Director Adcock has to have this held separately. Let me call on her, please.
Yes. Mr. Moore, on this one, I noticed that a Fall West group was found for this. So tell me what Fall West is. What is the location? How do people sign up for it? Because this is the first time I think this area of town has had a after-school program.
It might be the first time, but it's not the first time of us trying. It's just been difficult to find a organization out there. So let me ask the Director of Community Programs to come forward and describe the area and the location. Ms. Dissett.
We read these things sometimes so quickly that people don't understand that it's something new and something that they might be interested in.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you to the mayor, to the board, vice mayor. Thank you so much for this opportunity to explain the Far West. The Far West, I'll read the actual language that's in the RFQ itself. And this area stretches to the westernmost border of Pulaski County and is bordered on the north by the Arkansas River. Its Bowman, Napa Valley, and Rodney Parham roads form the eastern border, and there's the census tracts that are included in this area, and they're numerous. But it's out there, definitely past Chenal and Highway 10, kind of where they meet. That's the basic general area. Bruce is right. We definitely have advertised out in that area before. This is the first time that someone has actually applied for that particular area. The other interesting thing is that with that site, even though it's in the Far West, it can actually serve anyone in the city because we didn't want to limit it to that area, but we wanted to make it available, our services available in that area.
And where is that located?
The address for My Sister's Keeper that we have is, I think I have the address. I actually don't have the address. I thought I wrote it down, but I must not have brought that sheet of paper with me. I'm sorry.
And how can people call you and find out about it and where it is?
Oh, I'm sorry. Here it is. This particular location, My Sister's Keeper, is actually, their address is off of Green Mountain. It's 11700 Waynewood Drive, and that's where it's located. And we're not sure if they'll be serving 6 to 11 or 12 to 17 just yet. If it's approved by the board, we will go into negotiations with that agency to find out which age group they prefer working with.
Now, My Sister's Keeper sounds like a female program, is it?
We're not 100% sure. It won't be a female program, though. It will be age-based, either 6 to 11 or 12 to 17.
Okay. And what number can people call you to find out more details?
They can call the Community Programs Department at 501-399-3420.
Okay, thank you. Yes. Move for the adoption of the resolution.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. And Director Richardson, yes, you have a comment?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I'm not trying to be adversarial tonight, but I do believe we had a gang intervention prevention program out there for a number of years at Camp Aldersgate. up until 1998. I think when they had a mandate from their board, they had to move away from gang intervention prevention programming. So, Mayor, we have been doing some work out there. And I think we moved that program to an apartment complex right across the street from Greater Second Baptist Church do that gang intervention prevention work because we utilize data to suggest or determine where we need to have certain types of programming. And my only question to you, Dana, is what data are we using? What we talked some about intermediary last week. What are we utilizing to identify best practices, research, evaluation, and monitoring? Because particularly the monitoring and evaluation, because a lot of times people would do what is inspected rather than expected. So what kind of mechanisms do we have in place for monitoring and evaluation and technical assistance?
Thank you, Director Richardson. We actually have a lot of things in place, the number one being the Youth Master Plan, and so we are definitely following the recommendations set forth in the Youth Master Plan for those three aspects. Again, with the determining even where our locations are going to be and how many locations are in each area. We've been using a consultant actually that was formerly with New Futures, and that's Mark Perry. He continues to assist us with making those decisions by looking at the data, mainly with census tracts, how many people have moved into the area, how many youth are in a given area versus other areas, especially in the targeted age groups that we work with, which are primarily for these programs, either 6 to 11 or 12 to 17. In terms of monitoring, I have a full-time monitor that does exactly that, actually monitors the contract. And all of these contracts are different and separate.
Sure.
So one contract for definitely a 6 to 11 is going to look very different from a 12 to 17. But she monitors what's in that contract based on how they respond to the RFQ. And then for our evaluation, we're actually working on that right now, especially for next year. If you might remember in the Youth Master Plan, it details that we will have our evaluation evaluated, if you will, by December 2019, and we are on track to meet that goal.
So given the number of programs that we're contracted with, are we expecting that one person has the capacity to monitor all those programs? We contract with a number of programs, and to me, Bruce has suggested that we need to have some additional help, either in her department or with another contracted entity, because we have a number of programs, and monitor is not just dropping by and seeing what they're doing. You have to engage the kids, engage the program providers, and one person seems to be overwhelming for one person to do. So do you believe that that's a capacity, you have the capacity to do that with just one individual?
No, and actually Bruce has been very supportive. We've literally been talking about that these past couple of months and how we might be able to achieve that. He's been very supportive of the ideas that I've come. We'll actually be moving forward on one of them in the next couple of weeks. I hesitate to say it now only because I don't think it's really ready to be announced, but we actually have been talking about that very thing. Then in the summertime, we actually hire additional assistants with that through our Summer Youth Employment Program to monitor our summer program. So we definitely have a separate person for that. And then I also have a full-time coach, and the full-time coach is Jerry Stewart, who works with each one of our programs. After the program is monitored, our monitor may make a suggestion that a certain program needs technical assistance. And so our coach will make an appointment with that organization and actually sit down with them to assist them in whatever they need. We also use those decisions to go forward with the different types of training that we offer throughout the year, and that's also how our idea about the nonprofit summit that we had last year came about, was to provide the technical assistance that our programs would benefit from.
Thank you, Dana. Thank you, Mayor. I have no more questions.
Thank you. Director Wright, you're recognized,
Thank
please.
you. I just wanted to commend community programs on finally getting a vendor in that area. One of the things I discovered, you all, was as we are implementing the 21st Century After School grant for middle school, course transportation is an issue because a lot of these kids live so far out, and a lot of them are living in these apartment complexes. So with that being on Green Mountain Drive, it will pick up some of the other apartment complexes along Mara Lynn, which are duplexes. A lot of the kids that we can't service live there, so this will also be beneficial. So I'm very glad to know that you did get a vendor for that area. And point of clarification, my church is not Greater Second Baptist. That's a different congregation, but we are Second Baptist, and we did have a program at Trinity Village that we did try. So we've worked on this stuff for years, and I'm really hoping that this will be successful. But the big achievement is getting a vendor. You all, we know that.
And I would like to add, if I may, a point of clarification. We're excited that this is a new vendor, so we're also excited within Department of Community Programs that this this RFQ process has actually attracted 3 new vendors, and so we're very excited about that.
All right, thank you. We've had a motion and a second to approve the resolution. All in favor of the passage of resolution number 27 indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. The resolution is passed. We can now move on to a reading of resolution number 28.
A resolution authorizes the city manager to enter into contracts to provide prevention, intervention, and treatment funds for after-school, out-of-school time youth intervention programs for 2019, endorsed by the Commission on Children, Youth, and Families, and for other purposes.
Director Adcock?
Yes. Mr. Moore, when I looked at this one and the one before it, Southwest Little Rock, particularly in the Wakefield area, has lost 2 or 3 programs out of the last few months. One went out of business, and the other one, I do not know why they're no longer a provider. But then I saw we've got these other ones, so I would like some information on what you plan to do in the Wakefield or Southwest Little Rock area, because that is an area in much need of these services. Also, I would like to ask Dana some questions about this, if that's all right.
Director Richardson, you're recognized. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Basketball, what is that?
One of the things that's unique about the finance and the RFQ process is that until we get an opportunity to come through this part, we're a little bit limited in talking with the different organizations. So with this being a new vendor, I do know that a person named Joe Vincent is the executive director of that organization, but we haven't yet engaged them, mainly because we haven't been granted the permission to talk with them yet.
Well, I noticed they had basketball in West Central, and I was wondering if it was connected with our Parks and Recreation Department.
And with them gone, I'm not quite sure. We haven't talked with them yet.
Mr. Moore, do you know if this is, and if it's part of Parks and Recreation, while we're looking at our PIT money and not Parks and Recreation?
Right. And one thing that we will do is once we talk with them, all of that becomes part of negotiation. If we determine that they're not an appropriate fit, all of that will come out during our negotiation as we go more in depth into what's expected of the contract, because they still would have to agree to what our contract is, what is expected of our contract and for our type of program.
And Kingdom Builders in Midtown, can you give us some information about that, and so that people in that area can see about getting their children involved?
Yes, so McKelsick Robinson, we actually have worked with Kingdom Builders before. They have been a summer program. They are also currently one of our enhancement programs, so they've been very successful as they grow. McKelsick is also a teacher. I forget the name of the school, but it's a charter school. But he's been very involved in youth development for a long time, and he's decided that he is now ready to progress to the next level, which for us is a year-round program.
Do we know where that would be held?
I'm not quite sure yet, because he was waiting first to be approved before he actually secured his location, but he did know that it would be in the Midtown area.
Okay. I would like for you, how will you advertise these programs so parents can be looking for some advertisement on it?
So we definitely make that available to all of the, well, first of all, to be on our website. So that's one place where it will definitely be able to be found. And we're also working on the interactive piece of the website right now to get that back up. The second place is that we do make the information known throughout the different schools. We definitely send it to the schools. And as many of you know, we work with the schools for acknowledging scholars. And so we definitely have the relationship with different schools, principals, and the counselors. And the other thing is that, especially with our YIP program, one of the first important things is that they're responsible for recruitment. In fact, that's the first key for a youth intervention program. And so they will be actively involved in recruiting students on their own as well.
Thank you.
Mayor.
Director Richardson was next.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I think, Dana, you touched on part of what I was going to ask. So the youth intervention programs are, in fact, the youth initiative projects based on the recruitment, enrichment, empowerment model.
Yes.
So is there any particular reason why we changed the description of it from youth initiative project to youth intervention programs? Because youth initiative project was a modality that was developed over time. So is there any particular reason why we changed that? Because recruitment is a big part of it.
Part of the reason came out during the youth master plan process. It was to get to what PIT actually stood for. That's why you may remember our PPP programs used to be neighborhood-based programs, but now they're positive prevention programs. It was to really get back to what PIT stood for, prevention, intervention, and treatment, and to make that plain through the names of the type of projects. So neighborhood-based became positive prevention programs, and YIP became youth intervention programs. So there would be a clear delineation between the two.
So have we made that paradigm shift from prevention to intervention? Because at one point in time, a number of years ago, we had the preeminent expert on prevention or intervention or youth development here. So we try to have this shift in terms of prevention and youth development and understanding some of the principles of youth development. Are we still doing that, making this paradigm shift that we are addressing youth development?
Yes, and it's, I'd say, a little bit more intentional. And if you were to read the actual RFQs that went with this, we put a lot of that language actually into the RFQ to make sure that those that were responding to it knew exactly what they were responding to, that they agreed to it. It's also available on our website so that everyone would be able to understand the differences between a prevention program and an intervention program. And additionally, we encourage our vendors that if you have someone who's in an intervention program that's improving, they really should be moved over to a prevention program. That's the whole purpose of it.
A prevention?
Right, to be moved. If they've been in a YIP program for 3 or 4 years and their behavior is improved, their grades have improved, they may be ready for a prevention program to make space for another YIP student to come into that program, and vice versa. If you have someone that's in a positive prevention program that might need some additional assistance that comes from a smaller group of students, as you know, the intervention programs have less students in them, then we encourage our positive prevention programs to make those referrals into other programs as well. Because the whole purpose is to be there for the individual students, treat them individually, and work together to try to make a difference in youth development.
Well, that's kind of confusing as well, because I thought we had moved from prevention to youth development on a basic premise that if I told you I want you to hire Dean for a job, and you say, tell me about Dean. Well, he's not in the gang, he's not on drugs, he's not a teenage parent. Would you hire him? And probably not, because I didn't tell you one single thing he can do. So, that's the prevention model versus the youth development model. So preventing things from happening to young people is a big difference than building social skills, building all kinds of positive things that young people can do. So I thought we had moved away from prevention and doing some skill development, social skill development, rather than just preventing bad things from happening to kids.
And that's what we do on top of these programs. So those would be our other programs. For example, our summer youth employment programs, our career crash courses. So we haven't gotten away from that. It also is infused in this because a lot of the students who are in these programs, they then they may participate in other opportunities that we have as well on weekends or in evening or in other times. So we are paying attention to that youth development. It's infused within these programs also, and then we have opportunities outside of just these programs. As you know, these aren't the only programs that we offer out of the Community to Programs Department.
And they're all centered on graduated levels,
Exactly.
sequential in terms of how they move from one program to the next, to one level to the next, with the ultimate goal of empowerment so that we can reconnect them to society in a more productive and positive way.
Exactly.
That's what we're doing?
Yes.
Thank you, Dana. That's all, Mayor.
Move for the adoption of the resolution.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to adopt resolution number 28. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. The resolution is adopted. We can now move on to the first reading of ordinance number 29. Madam Clerk?
An ordinance to approve a plan and zoning development, establish a planned commercial district titled Geyer Springs Business Center, revised short form PCD, located behind 7315 Geyer Springs Road, Little Rock, Arkansas, amending the official zoning map of the city of Little Rock, Arkansas, and for the purposes first reading.
There's a motion and a second to suspend the rules and place this ordinance on second reading. All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Second reading, please.
An ordinance to approve a plan and zoning development, establish a planned commercial district titled Geyer Springs Business Center, revised short form PCD, located behind 7315 Geyer Springs Road, second reading.
There's a motion and a second to suspend the rules and place this ordinance on third and final reading. All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Third and final reading, please.
An ordinance to approve a plan and zoning development, establish a planned commercial district titled Geyer Springs Business Center, revised short form PCD, located behind 7315 Geyer Springs Road. Third and final reading.
All right, thank you. Is the applicant present? If you come forward, I'll give you an opportunity to make a presentation, and then it looks like we may have a few questions from board members. Welcome.
Hello, Mayor. I'm Jason with Hapless Marler. We're actually the civil engineering company for the applicant. The applicant's here behind me.
My name's David Gutierrez. We're applying to build this business center and event center. It's something that we've been wanting to do for a long time, that we've seen a lot of people ask us for. We have the lot back there, has no use. We're not using it now, so we want to put it to use and better the area.
All right. Anything else at this point in time? All right, let's see. There's some people that want to ask a question or two. Director Richardson, you're first, please.
Yes, what kind of uses are you talking about proposing?
Okay, so in the front area of the building, we want to put 3 retail centers. So just to rent out for any kind of business, like a small store or restaurant. In the back, the event center, we want to rent out for weddings, birthdays, quinceañeras, small get-togethers or small concerts.
Concerts?
Small concerts. I can't do too much there, but yeah. In general, what I spoke about last time to the commission is that we actually have our grocery store and bakery right next to this lot. So we've been there since about 2000. So a long time. And, we've always worked to make the area better, nicer. We take care of it. We've been there. I close every day at 10 o'clock. So I'm aware of my surroundings, and I know how I can take care of it, the way that we have with the store, and I know that even the word event center brings up a lot of questions, but I know that it's in good hands if we put it.
Well, Mayor, I'm not sure if any of my colleagues have questions for the applicants. Lance and Tom, I'm really flummoxed, so I want to hear from staff. So I don't know if anyone else has questions for the applicants, but my next questions, if not, is for staff. So I don't know if anyone has questions for the applicants.
I've got several people who wish to talk. Do you want to wait on
yes, sir.
The staff position?
I'd want to wait on my colleagues' questions for the
All right,
applicant.
Director Adcock, you're recognized, please.
From staff.
All right, Mr. Collins.
Let me ask our planning director, Mr. Collins, to come forward.
If you just have a seat for a moment, and then I'll give you a chance to come back.
Jamie, in Southwest Little Rock, special event centers really scare us because we've had so many bad examples of them. So tell me what staff, I see here staff is recommending approval. Why are you approving this one?
It's not correct.
Yeah,
It's
we're
recommended
recommending
denial.
Well, I'm
Director
sorry,
Adcock.
denial. So tell me why you're denying it.
Well, there's two main reasons why staff has recommended denial. The main reason is the proximity to residential. Per our ordinances, as an event center shall not be located within 750 feet of residential, single family or multifamily. Scott, if you'll bring up the zoning map. and you kind of see where the property is located. Now, they're on the back side or to the right or the east side of that property, and you'll see right adjacent to it is single-family residential on Fisher, and also to the north. And then there's multifamily just a little bit south of it. And when we rezone this to an event center, we are changing the zoning to the property. And so the applicant did, and we did speak with them on multiple occasions, said that there was residential property owners and or renters that was around there that, were for this. But this ties to the property, forever, or essentially forever. So if somebody swaps out the land, change renters, or somebody else buys the land, that zoning stays. And so we look at it for not just now, but we also look at it for what can happen in the future. So that was the main reason why we was in opposition to this. The second was the parking. Scott, if you'll pull up the site sketch. Mr. Gutierrez did just explain some of the retail uses that they're looking to put in there, and also the event center. And so we base our parking on uses of there. So just retail, commercial. And there's a difference between having, if you look at the front, 4 spaces that are just like they're selling clothes or some type of commercial like that, or 4 spaces that are restaurant. There's different parking counts. And the best that we can come up with is, right now, they're going to be about 8 short if it's retail. They'd be a little bit more short if it goes like all restaurant, based upon what is allowed to be there. And so we're concerned with the parking and the proximity to the Geier, and they're getting in on one drive only coming in. And then, and that access. And we've expressed that concern to the applicant, because and then, and potentially even when they first brought in about limiting the hours of the operation, of the event center in conjunction with the retail use. So at least, there'd be some type of shared parking on site or shared parking off site. And so those were the 2 things that drove staff not supporting the application.
Okay. What's on that property now?
Right now, that property was approved for mini warehouse. That is the planned commercial district that was approved for. So they're looking to revise that, for this use.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Okay, Director Peck, you're recognized, please.
Well, so Jamie, maybe this question is for you, and I'm just curious that staff is recommending denial, and that the Planning Commission seems to be almost unanimously for it. So I know that's not completely unique, but so what's up with that?
Well, it is not unique. It's happened several times in the past year that comes through. And, that can range, based upon what they feel is coming into the area, the applicant making their presentation, and also the opinions of the Planning Commission. And, all I can say is that, we presented our same recommendations at the commission. They did ask questions, and they come out with the recommendation, this last one, of approval, unanimous. So,
what about neighbors?
There was, if I remember right, there was one person that come in and spoke for it the first time that it come through. The second time that it come through, there was none that come in and spoke in opposition.
All right, Director Fortson.
Jamie, I don't know if this question is for you or Mr. Carpenter or both of you. Our ordinances have special restrictions on so-called event centers. The very next ordinance that's already been looked at calls for approval of a conference center. If you read those 2 write-ups, while one has the name conference center, the other event center, it appears their purposes are almost the same. And I'm trying to figure out for our distinction here, what is the true difference between an event center and a conference center? I mean, when I read conference center, I think of something like a convention center with hotel rooms and restaurants attached, but it appears that both of these are really just centers where events take place. So I don't know whether there's a legal definition that Mr. Carpenter needs to explain to me, or whether you can elaborate a little bit on that and educate me.
Well, I can elaborate a little bit, and Mr. Carpenter can chime in if need be. And you are correct in some of that. The description that they put in really is from the applicants, when they turn in what their application is. And then when we look down, when we decide on what we're going to bring it through as, or explain to them what it needs to come as, is the use of it. So the minute that they start getting into where they're having sales of stuff, where they're bringing in and they're renting the space out, and and selling tickets, for events, that's an event center, regardless whether they hold conferences in it or not. You could have a conference center that their primary use is conference, but if they use some of that space to hold like a small concert or whatever, that's an event center.
Well, part of our earlier attempt to establish a definition for event centers, as I recall, had to do with a lot of event centers became 24 or 48-hour party centers and then moved on elsewhere, and it caused some problems in the area. I'm trying to recall, and maybe you can help me, what restrictions we placed on event centers at the time we came up with those definitions.
Well, I can't recall that off the top of my head on all the restrictions of it. Yeah.
It mainly dealt with spacing as far as it relates to neighborhoods.
It was. I've got the excerpt as far as in here is what it says is the requirements, and really it was the distance from it. From several items. Church, sexually oriented businesses. Schools, public, private, and then the single family, and then it was. Had to come through as a PCD so that it would be heard at the board level. It has to be a planned commercial development.
Thank you.
Okay, Director Richardson.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Jamie, I think Gene and Cappy hit on one point in terms of how we move forward. So the term event center, not just in Southwest Little Rock, they frighten people. They can make people concerned throughout the whole city. That whole term, event center. So I think you just broke down the definition for me. That makes it clear for me. But the one thing I have really trouble trying to reconcile is it was passed unanimously at the Planning Commission. And this may not be a fair question for you. Do we have any idea what they were, Bruce, what was the rationale or what was the supportive kind of information they were utilizing or presenting for the unanimous passage?
Well, I think the first time, just recently this year, that it came before the Planning Commission, and it actually failed. And after reviewing some of the presentation, the city attorney was contacted, and it actually then went back to the Planning Commission, and probably maybe 6 weeks later after the initial vote. But we can't speculate why it failed the first time and passed the second time. But I think that's important to note.
So it's 10 ayes, 0 nays, and 1 recusal.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Director Wyrick, you're recognized, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Jamie, Mr. Collins. When I look at this sketch that you have up here for the, location where the event center is located compared to the property line, and it looks like there's probably residential structures on the east side, I'm assuming east side. It looks like to me that there's 23 feet from the back of this building to the property line. Is that what you see?
Let me pull up the sketch. It is, I believe that might be a little bit more. There's 7 foot, and then there's 16, and then there's an additional width for the parking stall.
My screen went dead.
It's 31.
It's 31 feet. Okay. 31 feet. And there's no buffers or anything that's planned like to buffer noise or sound from the neighborhood.
Right now they're proposing a 7-foot landscape buffer on that east
Maybe
side,
that's what
that
I saw, was
adjacent
that
side
7
that
foot.
you're looking
Okay.
at. And then they will plant that per ordinance, for the landscape buffer.
Okay. Do you know anything about the building? I know we have one location in Southwest that has all of their doors for maintenance or whatever in the back of the building. And when those doors are open, then the loud noise just broadcasts through the whole neighborhood. Do you know anything about how this building is going to be built? Is that part of your review?
That was not part of, as far as the access and review, that's part of the next review, upon approval in the building, that access in there. The applicant may be able to answer that a little bit better, what they plan to do inside the building and on the layout for that.
Okay. And you said 750 feet per ordinance from the building to a property line or to a residence. What is that 750 feet?
1 second, I'm pulling it back up.
Oh, my screen's dead.
I'm looking at there's a little write-up and everybody's write-up that was on there. That is typically from their property line, because it is zoned to their adjacent building, wherever that use is going to be.
From their property line to the adjacent building, so that would be the residence that might be on the east side of that.
Yeah, because typically we measure from where that use is located at, because somebody may rezone a property and it's where the building or the disturbance is located at to wherever the adjacent, building is.
Okay, so I was wondering if it was placed on the other end of their property, would that make a difference to staff's approval?
No, because
On the
they
west
still
side,
have,
they still wouldn't have?
they are still within that,
Okay.
that range.
They still would not be 750 feet. Okay. I was at the Planning Commission meeting when this came up, and we have asked more questions tonight than was asked the night at the Planning Commission. I was there. The applicant came up and did a brief presentation, and there may have been 2 or 3 questions. I don't think they really asked a lot of questions about it. I'd heard that there were a lot of people that were in opposition to it, but I also heard at the Planning Commission that there was a lot of people that wanted to see this business there. So that's the reason why I asked for this to be separate. I don't know that we have any cards in opposition to it.
We have no cards.
No cards in opposition, okay. Can I ask a couple of questions of the applicant?
Certainly.
Can I make one suggestion? The drawing that y'all have up there is not the exact drawing that should be up there. There's actually 55 foot from the back of the building to the property line. There's a 27-foot buffer, and then an additional 28 foot for the parking. But we had to put a 27-foot buffer in there per planning and staff level. And then the reason why we can't move the building to the front is there is a overhead utility easement across the whole front corner up there, as you see.
Okay. I was just trying to figure out if there was a way to make it match on the property that's there. That's why I asked about where that 750, had to be. So how many feet is that? I can't add all that up.
Well, it's 55 feet from the back, from the building line, or from the building to the property line, that back
To the
side.
property line, okay,
Yes, ma'am.
55 feet
With
instead of
with 27 foot
31.
of that being a buffer.
27 feet buffer. Okay, what do you plan on putting in that buffer?
Right now, there's a 10-foot green space, or landscape strip that has to be in there along that property line, and the rest is just a natural buffer as far as I'm concerned, or as I know.
Okay, so fencing, what kind of fencing do you plan?
It'd be a metal fencing with sheet metal on top. The apartments next, 2 lots over, have the same kind of fencing. I don't have any drawings of it, but it'd be sheet metal and metal posts.
Okay, and how tall will it be?
About 5 or 6 feet, depending on what they let us.
Okay, so you heard my question about what's going to be on the back of that building. I'm aware of at least one location where we had a lot of loud music going on, and they had doors on the back of the building, double doors on the back of the building. Well, there's also a restaurant back there and people going in and out. So when you open those doors, then all the noise from this location blasted through the neighborhood. So what can we expect on the back of that event center that's next to the neighborhood?
We've planned to do a double entrance at any entrance that we have. That would be in the event center to buffer out the noise.
On
also,
the back side?
Back side and
front side.
Front side,
Okay.
yeah. Any side that way. Because we're conscious, and like I said, since we have our store up front, I mean, we ourselves wouldn't want, too much ruckus going on. And that's what I mean when it'd be in the best hands, because we, watch who we rent out to and everything. But yeah, we plan the installation would probably be a specific kind. We've talked to a few different construction companies that they've touched a little bit about how we can do it. But one of the main things would be the double entrance. That would keep a lot of the noise in.
That does help.
And also, as far as the neighbors go, and I didn't bring them in this meeting, but I did have signatures from all of the neighbors, and they were all for it enthusiastically. And again, everyone knows us around there since we've been there so long, and that's why they also have a lot of trust in what we'll do.
So when you're talking about insulation, are you talking about insulation against noise?
Yes.
Is that what you're talking about?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. I guess that's all the questions I have. Thank you.
Okay, excuse me.
Mayor?
Yes.
Can I address Ms. Adcock's question on the parking?
Certainly, go ahead.
On our action new drawing, per the ordinance, for retail spots, it calls for every 225 square feet, 1 parking space, which equals out to 16 parking spaces for that retail area. And then for an event center, it's for every 100 square foot, it's 1 parking space, which is 96 parking spaces. We currently have 98. Most of his events he plans on in the evenings after the events the retail's closed, and in the morning or in the weekends when they're closed, is his suggestion on that.
Okay, Director Hines, you're recognized, please.
So, this is for applicant. So, is your grocery store on this lot to the west on the drawing?
To the south?
Just to the south where it says 150. Well, let's see here. Yeah. Where it says C4 right there. Over a little bit further. Down, over
Down, the C4.
to the left.
And well, that lot's also ours as well.
So both those C4?
Both those C4s are his lots, yes, sir.
And do you have access to parking, or you will have access to parking on those as well?
Yes.
Okay, so you've got extra off-site parking there when your store's not open. Okay, thank you. That's all the questions I had.
Director Adcock, you're recognized, please.
Scott, would you put that back up, please? What is the little narrow thing coming down through there, the little line? Is that just a driveway back there?
That's actually a 30-foot access easement that goes back to that property. It's owned by them. It's part of their property, but it's actually access easement.
So it's not part of this property?
It is part of the property, yes, ma'am.
Okay, so why are you calling an easement?
That's how the original plat actually called it out, is an easement. So therefore, if they were to block that off, it does have access to that lot back there.
Okay. We have I don't know if I want to call it a nightclub or special event center or something right down the street from this. and I get about one call every few weeks of all the noise that that place has. It's called the Oasis, which is not far from here. You've got mobile home parks in this area. You've got lots of apartments in this area. You've got 2 or 3 liquor stores in this area. The one thing you don't have in this area is a strong neighborhood association. It is covered by the Gower Springs or the Wakefield, but neither one of those neighborhoods are active. And I think that's why you do not see people here tonight, because they are not organized at this time. But I have a real problem with this being back close to those houses and close to the apartments in that area. So you said you had lots of signatures from neighbors. Where did the neighbors come from?
The house directly behind the lot, them, all of the trailer parks next to the lot, they all signed, and that whole neighborhood that's to the northeast, whoever we could get to talk to us, they all signed in favor. No one signed against. And I'm aware of that place, and I know what kind of atmosphere it has, and that's exactly the opposite of what we're trying to do. We're trying to go family oriented, and the same way our business that we have now runs, we'd run what we'd put there.
Mr. Carpenter or Mr. Moore, did we not put some restrictions in there about security at a special event center?
I don't think that they're in the ordinance. I know that there's security concerns that we've got depending on the event and the type of event. If I can ask a question, you used the word concert when you spoke before.
Well,
if you're talking about piano recitals, then that's a concert, but it's not the same as, Axl Rose showing up.
Yeah, no, there's no Justin Bieber here.
And the follow-up question is, if all you're talking about is things like that, are you willing to write that? You'd have to ask us. We can't ask you, but are you willing to ask that be a condition of your planned development? And I think the concern that's been expressed is, you can get a pretty loud 3-man jazz band, and people don't want a pretty loud 3-man jazz band in the area. I think that's what some of the concern is. But if you're talking about, you've got a couple of guys playing at a wedding reception, you've got a piano concert, you've got the local choir putting something on.
Yeah.
Mariachis.
Yeah, well, the only reason I didn't put anything in writing is because I don't want to restrict, for example, a mariachi band, and since that's in there, that'd already be a reason to say, hey, no, you can't do this. We want to keep it open, but I will state and assure that that's the way we plan to keep it. Weddings, birthday parties, quinceañeras, that kind of thing. And mostly it's for, we have a lot of people around the community that live in trailer parks, apartments, that don't have anywhere to do their parties. And that's kind of what we're trying to do, is provide a place. We sell a lot of wedding cakes and birthday cakes at our shop. So a lot of those same people, they tell us about places where they're looking to rent. And that's what we're trying to do, is provide it to where, if it'd be next to our shop, we can keep an eye on it. We can take care of the business.
Mayor.
Go ahead, Director Hancock.
I'm with Mr. Carpenter. If you can put those things in there, the anniversaries, the weddings, the birthday parties, those kind of events, and leave out the big concerts like they have over on I-30 and everything. I have no problems with those events. I have problems where it goes to 1 or 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. Anything past midnight usually isn't very nice. And so, if we could limit the hours of operations and the type of events you would have, I would have no problem with it. But just to say special event center, that scares me.
And the key is it's got to be offered by the applicant, not demanded by the city. If there's an interest in that, and the city's interested in deferring for a week or 2 weeks to see if language can be worked out, this would be a time.
Just a second. So, our Director Adcock has made a request for additional language in the ordinance. Is there some willingness to put that language in there?
No, that's not the question. The question is, are they willing to offer it as an amendment?
Right.
Otherwise, we're making a demand on them that we can't really make. But if they want to work the language out and ask the board to defer it for a week or 2 weeks so we can try to work that language out, they can do that. Or this board can make that as a motion.
We have several other people wish to comment, so I'm going to leave that question out there while we have some other comments by board members. Director Richardson.
Yes, Mayor. Tom answered the question I was going to present to him. I move to approve.
Well, there's a motion and a second to approve the ordinance. We're still in the discussion stage, so Director Hines, you're next.
I forgot what I was going to ask. Y'all got me sidetracked. I'm not. I'm trying to think what I was thinking. This whole object. So, and I think I've shopped in your store. So you guys have a bake. Oh, I know what it was. Now I know what it was. Would you explain to everybody what a quinceañera is? Because I know what it is, but most of us gringos don't know what a quinceañera. We call it something else in the.
It's like a sweet 16. It's a kind of a coming of age party for
coming
15.
out party. Yeah. Thank you,
Director Wright. You're recognized, please.
That was kind of going to be my question. What's the other type of business that you have there? Because I'm kind of like Director Adcock. The word event center frightens me because what's to stop it from turning into a nightclub that is disturbing the neighborhood, and it's just not a good scene. But if you got this type of store there. Okay, that's more of an incentive to keep it keep it under control. Okay, thank you.
Director Peck.
Thank you. Mr. Gutierrez, obviously you're a backbone of your community in this neighborhood, and I know what a quinceañera is, and I know what mariachis are, and I'd like to come to the next one. No, but I know your business. I know you're established. The neighbors want it. I don't see why we wouldn't support this. So thank you, and maybe you can be the beginning of a strong neighborhood association.
Yeah.
Director Wyrick.
Will you be going to get an ABC permit for this event center?
We've spoken to the ABC, and that if we were to have alcohol there, that would be the way that would go. They would require us to get a permit through them, and us have whoever's serving alcohol, us have a certified bartender. So not just anyone can get behind the bar and just start serving drinks to whoever.
No, you get in trouble for that. Yeah.
And if not, if we don't get a permit that way, then.
Okay, thank you.
All right, we've had a motion and a second to approve the ordinance. All in favor of the passage of the ordinance indicate by saying aye. Opposed say nay. The ordinance is passed. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Board.
Thank you.
All right, we can now move on to ordinance number 31.
An ordinance to reclassify property located in the city of Little Rock, Arkansas, amending the official zoning map of the city of Little Rock, Arkansas, and for the purposes first reading.
There's a motion and a second to suspend the rules and place this ordinance on second reading. All in favor indicate by saying aye. Opposed say nay. Second reading, please.
An ordinance to reclassify property located in the city of Little Rock, Arkansas, second reading.
There's a motion and a second to suspend the rules and place this ordinance on third and final reading. All in favor indicate by saying aye. Opposed say nay. Third and final reading, please.
An ordinance to reclassify property located in the city of Little Rock, Arkansas, third and final reading.
We have no cards. Director Adcock?
Yes. I was at the Planning Commission when this came up, and there were several people there that had businesses, Mr. Moore, back warehouses, the Hastings families and other people. Do you know if the Jericho Way people met with them and talked to them about this?
I'm not sure if that's happened. I'd heard the same thing, and I think there was some outreach made to the owners of property in the area. I think just to clarify, I think there was some misguided information about what the plan would be and so forth. So I think that was all presented, and I think everyone is okay with it at this point.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, there are no other questions. All in favor of the passage of ordinance number 31 indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed say nay. The ordinance is passed. We are now on to our discussion item. It is now 10 minutes of 8. We've been here for almost 2 hours. There's a motion and a second to recess for 15 minutes. All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed say nay. We'll be in recess for 15 minutes. I am going to go ahead and start out the budget, and I'm looking for our staff to be with us as well. Thank you. The city manager, myself, and the finance department, and all the department heads have been working on the budget document that you have before you, and I'm going to start out and highlight some of the issues that we have as it relates to this budget for 2019, and then we'll get back into the details. Mr. Moore will talk about some of those. I'm going to take you through the first several pages. First of all, what you've got before you is a $210,423,199 budget for proposed for 2019. It's about $2.5 million over the amended budget for 2018. It does many of the things that we've made commitments to our citizens about. So we are maintaining the increased funding for staffing and services and programs that we made a commitment to when we passed the 5/8 cent operating sales tax committee commitment back in 2011. We are continuing to fill all police department vacancies. In the uniform vacancies, we currently have 16 vacancies. I'm very proud of that, and a police chief vacancy. We have, and we're also going to be taking care of the 911 call taker positions, utilizing a new recruitment and testing procedure that we implemented in 2017. That starts in February. We've got 9 call takers and 7 and 8 dispatchers are the positions that we'll be training beginning in February. We are fully staffed in terms of code enforcement and animal service positions that we added previously in accordance with our 5/8 cent operating tax that was part of that 2011 sales tax that we passed. So these fundings are all continued in your 2019 budget recommendation. We also are looking at a variety of other maintained increased funding commitments for staffing, services, and programs that were also identified in the 5/8 cent operating sales tax portion of that. And that includes our neighborhood-based community initiatives for $5.5 million. It provides for continued annual fleet replacement allocations, a total of $850,000, $350,000 that comes from the general fund special project allocation, and $500,000 from the 3/8 cent accumulated interest earnings. We will continue funding for Rock Region Metro Transit Services, and that includes the routes that we added in 2012 that serve John Barrow Road and Pulaski Technical College. This is a $208,000 increase from last year, based on the budget that Rock Region Metro passed. And we are proposing, and Mr. Moore will highlight this in more detail, $1 million transfer from our street fund to assist with our overall general operating fund. We're going to continue funding with the Pulaski County operation of the regional jail, which is about $2 million. I want to tell you that the county has already given us notice next year that they are proposing to not renew a multi-year contract with any of the cities in the county. They are going to go on a daily fee and an admission, basically an entry fee when they get booked in. It is something I'm greatly concerned about. The estimate based on our current numbers in the jail will add another $2 million to our contribution to the jail. So next year, instead of $2 million, if there's going to be some efforts to explore ways to reduce that amount that the Municipal League is working on. I've had several conversations with them about that, but it is going to be a substantial increase next year. But for 2019, we're at the current operation, the last year of a 10-year contract at $2 million. We're going to continue funding for weed lot maintenance, which is now at $384,000 in our budget. We'll continue with board and secure funding for our residential buildings. We've got about a $60,000 carryover, so when you see that number, understand we also got a carryover to provide for that. And we will be maintaining our funding of the operation of Jericho Way, our Homeless Day Resource Center, in partnership with North Little Rock. Our contribution to that is $400,000. Additionally, we are going to be adding 12 positions to accommodate, I'm proud to say, the addition of Station 24 in Southwest Little Rock. The recruit class will begin in February, and we're going to hire 12 firefighters, 3 captains, 3 engineers, and 6 firefighters. Currently, we have 13 vacancies. So along with those new hires and the 13 vacancies, we'll have about 25 that will be in that class. We'll be providing funding to maintain the 15 police positions that were previously funded by our COPP grant that expires in February. Currently, we're up from 8 to 12 officers assigned to community-oriented policing, and I'm very hopeful that we can honor that commitment and get back to the 15 and, frankly, go even further than that as we progress. Let me talk about the budget recommendations now on this particular page. This provides for funding for 2.5% salary increases and step and grade increase progressions or increases for the FOP and the IAFF. It provides for step and grade progression also for our ASME personnel. But I must tell you, this budget presumes no raises for any of our non-uniform employees. It maintains 100% city-paid premiums for employee-only coverage for basic health, dental, vision, and life insurance benefits for all of our city employees directly. And importantly, we maintain funding of 55% of the cost of employee family health insurance coverage for our employees. Let's talk about the general fund revenues for a moment now. We have obviously revenue assumptions that this budget is based on from our anticipated 2018 year-end results. You'll see what these are outlined on the screen. County sales tax increase of 1.3%, city sales tax increase of 1.5%, assessed valuation on property of 4%, business license increases of 1%, and a planning and building permits increase of 1%, which is a slight fee increase, and I believe you have a handout on the dais there that indicates what those are. We're very hopeful that with the resolution of the internet sales tax issue, with the Wayfair case, and hopefully the legislature being prompt about resolving the issues and passing legislation, that we can begin to see an increase in that sales tax from internet sales. You might note that I believe a week ago or so, there was an article in the newspaper that indicated that internet sales were up 19%. Again, these are even increasing more and more each year. So I'm very hopeful that we can hit that target, and I think that the Wayfair resolution should help us. Again, on the next page, we see our franchise fees of combined revenue represent an increase of approximately 4.4% over the 2018 amended budget. And these adjustments include the ongoing reduction of rates associated with the federal tax cut and the Jobs Act, offset by the impact of the expiration of the associated credits to business and industrial customers. You'll note that we had to make a big adjustment this year because of the drawback of our utilities on what they expected to be some increases that the Public Service Commission was going to give them. Also, on the next page, we see that some charges for services. We anticipate an overall 6.8% increase from the 2018 amended budget. You'll see charges for parks and recreation, zoo, and golf activities that obviously we know fluctuate significantly depending on the weather. Let's hope we've got decent weather. Parks and recreation, we've anticipated a 3.6% increase for the zoo, who really had a hit this year, a 4.9% impact based obviously on the opening of the Cullivis exhibit in 2019, which should be a nice new attraction. Golf, 4.6%. Our fitness and aquatics at 2.7%. And a 911 salary reimbursement of 83.3%, which is an increase from the $300,000 this year to $550,000 due to a reduction in maintenance fees. So let's move over now to the general fund property tax, and I'm going to ask Mr. Moore to carry on to detail this presumed property tax increase to $29.98 million. Mr. Moore.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to point out, I'm going to have Sarah go over the specific numbers, but this is how we begin to build the annual budget. We take pages basically 8, 9, and 10, look at where we think the revenue is going to be at the end of 2018. And as the mayor said, we work very closely with various groups, as for instance the Pulaski County on the property tax, to come up with that projected figure. So we have where we think we're going to end in 2018, and that's why you see the amended budget number throughout your presentation. But to get to that $210 million revenue picture, again, it's based on where we think we're going to end this year, in addition to what we see as increases going forward. There are some unknowns, as Mayor mentioned, with the legislature as they deal with the internet sales tax law that will go into effect. And we've been talking a lot about this. How could that potentially impact our budget? One, just from a timing standpoint, it's definitely half the year at most likely, maybe even into the fall. So with that, I'd like Sarah just to go over the various revenue categories that we have. Sarah.
Before we go on to this slide, I'd like to go back one slide and just tell you a little bit more about the parks, because while we see some increases there that may be a little bit concerning, I wanted to point out that in almost every one of these cases, the zoo, for example, with a 4.9% increase, that's still 2.3% less than the revenue they had in 2017. Same with the golf. It's 2.7% less than their 2017 revenues. So the weather really does play a big role, and these are really not forecasts that are out of line with a normal year. On the next slide with the property tax, as the city manager said, our treasury manager works closely with the county. He was provided this estimate from the assessor's office. So we are forecasting a 4% revenue growth for our property tax revenues. That represents an increase of about $1,050,000 to the budget. On the next slide, the county sales tax. We're projecting 1.3% from the 2018 amended budget, 1.5% from anticipated 2018 year-end results. This would be about a $561,000 increase. I did look back over the last 7 years since the 2012 tax was implemented, and the average over that period of time is just under 1.4%. So this is still not out of line. On the city sales tax, the growth to $57.85 million would be about an $826,000 increase to the budget. This is 1.5% over our estimated 2018 year-end results. And again, when looking back from 2012 to 2018, that is the average, 1.5% over that period. We've had years that were better than 3, we've had years that were less, but the average is that 1.5% growth. The next slide is our franchise fees. We're projecting, you know that we had to reduce our budget this year to 28.25% after our original forecast because of the Tax Cut and Jobs Act having a major effect on the energy and the CenterPoint revenues. We did receive information directly from the utilities, as the city manager said. Energy is forecasting a significant increase. We've got 13.5% in the budget. The reason for this, residential customers will actually probably continue to see lower bills, but the business and the industrial customers, the credits that were retroactively refunding the adjustment for the rate adjustment, those expire for those customers. And so they'll still have the reduced rates associated with the Tax Cut and Job Act, but they won't have those additional credits reducing the revenues. And so they are forecasting actually a little bit higher number than we put in. They forecast closer to 15.5%, and I took it back to 13.5% because I was a little bit nervous about it. CenterPoint Energy is expected to be about 7% less than the 2018 amended budget. Again, they provided us a revenue estimate, and it has to do with the timing of the adjustments associated with the Tax Cut and Jobs Act. There are no rate increases projected for Central Arkansas Water. We do have a scheduled rate increase that will continue for the wastewater utility. Our cable and fiber optics, we're forecasting just a very slight decrease, and then continued decreases in the telephone and the long-distance utilities. So when you mash all that up together, it's about 4.4%. On the next slide, the charges for services. I already kind of went through that with you on the slide that I started with. But again, this is a combination of all kinds of charges for services for our park activities, also for some of the services that our police and fire provide. And the overall is about 6.8%, and we went through some of those individual components just a moment ago. Next slide is our business licenses. This has traditionally been a very good, steady source of revenue for us. We have had steady, very slow increases from 2010. We've never had a decrease. But we have no rate increases. This is just, small growth associated with the business activity, but no rate changes are projected. And then our fines and fees. This is an interesting slide. If you look back at 2013, our courts were generating $3.23 million in revenues. That number forecast for 2019 is just $2.35 million. That has kind of steadily declined. We are forecasting a slight or an increase of about 4.6%. We are seeing some of our parking and traffic revenues increasing, but our general fine revenues continue to decrease, and some of that is due to some of the alternative arrangements that are being made. And so in conclusion, on the next slide, with our revenues, the overall revenue growth before any kind of transfers in, we're estimating to be about $4,764,000 for a total of $202.19 million, which is a 2.4% increase over the 2018 amended budget. And when you look at the next slide, all the things we've been talking about are put in numbers here. And we do have, this is all in comparison to the amended budget, as was mentioned. When you look down at the transfers in line, we're going to have some transfers in that exceed our original 2018 adopted budget, but are less than the amended budget. They do include some one-time transfers that will be detailed on later slides. There is no use of carryover included in this budget. So the total revenue will be a 1.22% increase from the amended budget, which is just over $2.5 million.
Sarah, before we get into the expenditures, let me, Dr. Campuris, I believe, has a question for you.
Okay.
Sarah, you say we're 2.4 over the amended budget. Where are we compared to the budget a year ago at this time?
It would be, our original budget was 201,187. We're just going to 202. I can't do the math in my head that quickly, but it would be slightly less than the change from our amended budget, because we did decrease our amended budget for a decline in both anticipated sales tax revenue and in franchise fees.
A little over $1 million, yeah.
Right. So it's a smaller growth than from the original budget in 2018.
And secondly, Bruce was talking about when the anticipated, hopefully increase in sales tax from the internet sales. When do you think that would be, and is that included in these calculations?
There is a slight impact included. I didn't want to get too ahead of myself there. There is still a lot of discussion at the legislature. Everything from, there's some thoughts that they don't want cities to see a windfall without recognizing the fact that we are just recovering what we have previously lost. There is some discussion of trying to cap local sales tax, including the tax that would be considered the hospitality tax, setting a cap that would not allow you to go over a certain amount. They might grandfather in some of the previous taxes, but stop your growth any further there, which could have a catastrophic, I think, effect on potential bond issues and continued growth. So we still have a lot of issues to work through with the legislature. Hopefully, we've got Emily working on that, and hopefully we can get them to see that this is critical to local governments. And if they want to give credits at the state tax level, they can do so. But we would really like to get our piece back.
Well, I mean, that's the whole point. I mean, it is not their money. It's money that it should be coming here for us to do what we need to do. And I would tell you that $800,000 worth of increase in our budget compared to the budget we passed a year ago is probably optimistic unless we get that money. I mean, our expenses have gone up, and if they try to manipulate this to get more money for the state at our expense, then this is going to really be catastrophic.
One favorable thing that we have been told is that many of the online retailers, since the passage of the Wayfair decision, have begun to go ahead and collect and remit local sales tax. So as long as they're filing it right now, we should be receiving our share. If they're paying it into the state, we should be receiving our share. And so hopefully we'll see the impact. We'll know better after the holiday season. We get our revenues 2 months behind, but we may see some improvement even before the legislature requires.
Well, this is a question for Bruce. Who is representing us in the other cities in this state at the state level to make sure that I can't imagine anybody that's elected by a community trying to put something to the members of that community by not passing the money back down. It's astounding to me that someone would try not to do that, but that's
so.
Well, the municipal league is very active in this.
Well, we just passed an ordinance to hire Jeff Hoggard, who is one of our lobbyists, along with Emily being out there, and I we've been at the Arkansas Municipal League, and these issues have been discussed, and there'll be a full team of people out there. But let me just say, I mean, this is extraordinarily serious. The idea of capping local sales taxes, and some of the issues that they're doing are really, really preempting our own ability to control our own destiny. And it is serious, serious business. We have got to talk to our legislators, and I mean directly, not just through the newspaper, but or through any kind of social media. We need to, one-on-one, we need to get in front of them eye to eye and tell them what this means in terms of our budget and our ability as a capital city to grow and be progressive. So I mean, I'm just saying to all of us, this is a conversation that's just now beginning, but we really need to put the pedal to the metal on this issue. So
But it's
the
not just
municipal league
us.
is on top of it, but it's you know what it's like out there in the legislature.
the
I know, but
city's
it's not
ability
just
to
us.
raise-
It's Forest City. It's El Dorado.
It is,
It's
and they're-
Fort Smith. It's everybody. I
And
mean,
they're all-
everybody's going to get the same shaft in this deal if they don't do it the right way.
Well, believe me, there was an executive committee of about, I don't know how many is on there, 60 or 70, I believe, that all feel the same way that we do.
I know Emily's reaching out to our underwriters and our bond counsel and all too, because a city's ability to generate revenues is a key factor in our bond ratings too.
Yep.
And so I think that we're going to have that community behind us as well. Are there any other questions on the revenue part? If not, I'm going to turn it back over to
I think you're being overly optimistic unless you know.
Well, let me.
I mean, we've done this every year, and we've had basically zero sales tax growth.
Well, and believe me, this is it's not easy to get to this projection. But again, there's some things that happened to us when we had this discussion this time last year that we had no way of knowing the impact, and that's the tax break that got passed at the national level. Just to put it in perspective, Energy had told us that not only would we get what we saw in 2017, it was going to be $1.2 million higher. So we plugged that in very quickly. And so not only was it not $1.2 million higher, it was lower by significant, almost more than $1 million. So that was $2.4 million right there. So, and I understand the boards. I think we're all conservative when we come to these projections, but at this point, I do feel comfortable with them.
Well, it's not, and I understand what happened with energy. I understand with the tax. My point is that if you look at sales tax revenues over the last 5 years, I bet they hadn't been up 1%.
I did look back over the last 7 since the tax had passed, and the average is 1.5%, and looked at both of them, and we're in line with that. I mean, it could be typically what we've seen is after a little bit slower year, we see a little bit of a bump. I don't know what the reason for that is, but it's been kind of up and down. It is very difficult to predict. We don't get, we just don't get a lot of guidance.
Well, I know it is hard doing this, but it's equally as hard in August of this next of 19 coming back and having revised budget that's $2 or $3 million down, and that's the I'd rather start out and say, isn't it great we've got the extra money, let's expand the budget, but that's the problem.
But the other thing, and we'll get to see it here going forward. I mean, one of the things that was very important this year, especially going forward, is we're not using any carryover money at all. So that had a significant impact as we began to look at expenditures and reductions. So I think those are some things to keep in mind as we go to the next part of the program, dealing with general fund assumptions and givens, page 21. So we have the $210 million revenue, and now how do we begin to shape the general fund expenditures? And so one of the items, because the short-term note goes off the books, that was a decrease of $1.6 million with retirement of the 2013 note. This budget does include a $1.1 million reserve allocation. Last year was $1 million, and now we feel like we can go up a little bit. The mayor mentioned the $200,000 increase in Rock Region. The jail stays at the same level, but as the mayor said, we're going to need all board members involved in this discussion at the county level. There's already a resolution that I think has been filed. I'm not sure if it's been acted on, but it had, and the entire Little Rock delegation is part of it. And so we needed to have that conversation. And that's the other thing the league's going to spearhead, try to pull together cities and talk about how, because this isn't unique to Pulaski County and Little Rock, apparently. I think some of the counties across the state are moving in this direction. As we know, the Art Center is going to close next year. Our contract calls for a $700,000 allocation. This would recommend a $350,000 allocation out of the penny that we had been collecting, with the understanding that in 2019 we might have to relook at that, just depending on where we are and where they are. Mayor mentioned the 2.5% salary adjustment for police and fire, and the grade schedule progression, so that stays in place for both police and fire, and also AFSCME. One of the, I think, best benefits that the city offers is that we pay 100% of the employee-only coverage and 55% of premiums for family. This also does allow for 2 options that include lower deductibles and copays. The 12 new fire positions will be hired in February of next year to gear up for Station 24. These next few slides just show the pension rates for the LOPFI, police and fire, and the non-uniform, which remains unchanged. And then the board obviously is aware that we've closed both of those funds, LOPFI police and LOPFI fire. The commitments there for the administration is $349,000 in 2019, and for fire is $263,000. See the judges' rates for their pension, and we get those directly from the state. Those are mandated requirements. So other assumptions in the personnel model include $5.5 million vacancy allocation. The COPS grant ends in February, so those 15 officers will be picked up by our general fund. And then we've talked about this a lot at the board level, so this will also in 2019 be the first phase of a 4-year plan to implement a second set of fire turnouts. And those are 75 a year for the next 4 years. So now I'm going to just ask Sarah to go through the numbers from the general fund by category.
Okay, again, the variances shown here are in comparison to the amended budget. So when you look at personnel, you really have to look at personnel along with the vacancy allocation. We start the year with, kind of the fully funded personnel budget, and then on the line 11, we have the vacancy allocation that is allocated to departments and reduces the personnel budget as the year goes on, as vacancies are achieved. So the amended budget includes the vacancy savings through the end of August. And so when you net both the change in personnel and the change in the vacancy savings, it's about $3.1 million. But if compared to the original budget, which is the fully funded budget for personnel, we're talking about a $5.7 million change in personnel. And that consists primarily of that 2.5% for police and fire. That makes up $3,465,000 of the change. Then with the additional 12 firefighters we've discussed, and then the police incentive programs for recruits and for sick leave incentives, the change in just the police and the fire payroll is an increase of $4,675,000. The other million is because we reduced our vacancy savings requirement from $6.5 million to $5.5 million. And the reason we've done that is because we have so many filled public safety positions, so we're not going to have as large a vacancy savings. As we move down, back to that slide, through the various line item categories, the city manager already highlighted the changes on line 7 in outside agency funding. We do have another slide that will show that in detail. The debt service, the $1.6 million reduction we discussed. The $3.5 million change in vacancy savings is just the timing between the amended budget. The change from the original adopted is the $1 million we discussed. And then we will show transfers in detail as well on another line. So we're going from, really the change from our amended budget is only it's actually a reduction of $387,000 from our amended budget. It's a $2 million, little less than $2 million increase from our 2018 adopted budget. So on the next slide, this now breaks it down by department. So the same numbers, but just arranged by department. So the big decrease that you see in general government is because that is where the outside agency contributions, the special project allocations, the debt service, all of that is in general government. The all other divisions, most departments, and again, this is in comparison to the amended budget, so they had vacancy savings reducing their budgets throughout the year, which makes that change less when comparing to the amended. But most departments, with the exception of information technology and then our public safety departments, are actually reducing expenses and significantly from the original budget in 2018. We did think it was important to not reduce anything in our information technology department. We really needed the funds for the infrastructure backbone and for the maintenance of our public safety software and that we have in place. Our police and fire, you see the increases in $1,756,000 and $3,291,000, and that again is associated with the salary increases. On the next slide, this highlights the changes in personnel. This first page is just general fund positions. So you'll see in general administration, there's a reduction of 3 positions from the 2018 adopted budget. One of those is just a reclassification from the general fund to special projects. You'll see it when we get to that page. 2 positions are being eliminated, an administrative assistant and then a vacant special projects administrator. No change in the board of directors. Community programs, there's a reclassification of a position from the general fund budget to a special project. In finance, there's an analyst position that will be eliminated. In human resources, there was an addition of an FOI coordinator. Then there was a coordinator that was eliminated from the budget, and there was an administrative position that has been moved to the benefits consulting project. It's responsible for reconciling benefits. As we move down, Parks and Recreation, there's some net changes going on here. There's an equipment operator position that was eliminated during 2018, but there are 2 new programmer positions. One is for the MacArthur Military Museum that will be partially funded by contributions from the foundation, which is reflected in revenue. And then they're expanding the therapeutic recreation program in order to have a 5-day program. This too is offset partially by some donations and also by increased programming revenue, but it provides a better option for the adults and children in that program. There's a golf maintenance position that has been eliminated. The incumbent employee is retiring at the end of the year. In Jim Daly Fitness Center, there is a custodial position that was eliminated. The funds for that position, again, I think that was a turnover position, and the funds are reclassified for contracted services. There was a receptionist position eliminated at the zoo, and the 12 firefighters you see added, and 14 additional police positions, which includes just the reclassification of the 15 cops from the grant or the special project. You'll see a reduction when we go to the next slide. And then there's a victim services specialist that's paid out of a special project. So the next slide, you see the change in the special projects. So as I mentioned, the 1 general fund position, there were some positions added in community programs that were associated with those $5.5 million project allocations. Human resources, we have the position that's going to go to the benefits consulting project and a LRCVB benefits administration position. Then you see the reduction of the COPS that moved up to the general fund. On the next slide are our enterprise funds. So we've added an additional crew for 2019. There were 2 other positions added in during the year, bringing it to a total of 9. And then we've added a street repair specialist to the street fund budget. So grand total, all funds, 19 positions added for a total of 2,194 positions. On the next slide, we've got our outside agency support. So even though the Rock Region allocation went up $208,000, as the mayor mentioned, transit is an eligible expenditure of the street fund, and in order to help fund our public safety increases, we reallocated $1 million of the transit charge to the street fund. The jail is not going up $176,000. The estimated 2.3% increase is $45,000. But we were supplementing our allocation, which last year was a little over $1.9 million. We were supplementing with a local jail fine. As court costs and court fines are reduced, our jail fine revenue is reduced as well. We had fewer funds available in that project, so there's only going to be $265,000 available to help fund that. So the allocation from the general fund has to increase. As mentioned, the Arts Center received $700,000 from the general fund last year. They also received additional $200 and some thousand from the Park Penny project. But this year that we're going to appropriate $350,000, but it will come from the already previously accumulated 1 cent for the Park Penny for improvements in MacArthur Park. So that relieves the general fund for this year of $700,000. Our other contributions stay the same until we get to First Tee. Here, due to the study that we're going to do, again, this is in comparison to the original adopted budget here. But we're going to decrease that to $120,000, an estimate of the $40,000 a month for the first quarter, until pending the results of the study. On the next slide is our debt service, and as the city manager mentioned, this is due to the roll-off of a note that was issued in 2013. It was a $7.7 million note. It was funded, the principal portion is paid by our 3/8 cent dedicated tax. There's a transfer in that compensates for this tax, or for this note payment, and that was utilized to advance 3/8 cent projects. The interest is borne by the general fund. So that's the note that's rolling off. And so that's one of the reasons for the reduction in the transfers in as well, because as those notes roll off, the transfer from the 3/8 cent fund to pay the debt also decreases. On the next slide, this is just a summary of the various transfers, which I'm going to go into in detail on the next 2 slides. So on page 35, we have the list of all the special project funding. So facility improvements, that's our building services allocation. They had sufficient funds remaining in the project allocation from last year, so we're only going to fund $500,000, but that will leave $975,000 still available for building repairs. The annual fleet replacement was $850,000. We're appropriating $350,000 from the general fund. The other $500,000 will come from accumulated interest earnings in the 3/8 cent fund. It can only be used for capital purchases, and so we're going to use that for our fleet replacement. The homeless outreach is increasing slightly due to a CPI adjustment in the contract with DePaul. Weed lot maintenance, we're decreasing that allocation by $115,600. We do have some funds remaining there as well. The municipal ID outreach program, that took a while to get off the ground initially, and so there is funding remaining in that project. The program will continue, but there is still funding available from prior year allocation. Demolition has been reduced slightly for residential demolition. The residency incentive program, last year we did not allocate, we had allocated $100,000 the previous year. Last year we did not allocate any additional funds. that program has been utilized, and we need to kind of supplement it again with $50,000. Land Bank has substantial funding available. The Public Service Announcement Recruitment Program, we do not need to fund this year. And as the mayor mentioned in his presentation, we still have some commercial demolition funding available that will help with the Board and Secure and the commercial demolition funding to supplement those programs. The other funding remains pretty consistent. Neighborhood Challenge we did not fund last year. We're adding $23,332 to the project this year to continue that program. We had funds available last year. So that reduces the special project funding that will be transferred out of the general fund by just under $1.3 million. On the next slide, we've got our grant match transfers. Here we, this has a lot to do with what departments are requesting to go for. Our Arkansas State Parks grant, we actually received notification that we have been awarded the grant that will fund 4 different parks. There are grant match funds that have already been set aside for that grant, so it is not in the list here. There is another grant that we have funds set aside for, the mountain bike grant, that if that grant is awarded, we have the funds available to meet that. We do not have an undesignated match allocation at this time. Okay, on the next slide. So that's a net reduction of $77,000. So this is our summary. Our revenues plus our transfers in will be $210,423,199. And when you go down our list, our expenses will be the same. Personnel represents 75% of the general fund budget. Moving on to the street fund on page 38. The projected revenues have been, we've worked with the state and to estimate our turnback funds, and so we are estimating $20,144,330. The decrease in transfers in has to do with our parking garage fund. There are parking meter revenues and street cut revenues that go first to debt service on the parking garage funds, debt service and operations, and then excess is transferred into the street fund at the end of the year. In having a discussion with the bond raters this year and the way they've reformulated their calculations, we needed to leave some additional funds on hand to ensure that we didn't have any kind of an impact on our bond rating. So we're not anticipating that transfer this year. Even though we've got enough money to cover the debt service and operations, we needed to leave enough cash there to maintain that bond rating. So that's a reduction in transfers in. On the next slide, you see their expenses. Here you will notice the $1 million outside agency funding. That is the Rock Region Metro $1 million that we reallocated there. So their expenditure budget will be increasing $551,000. That $1 million is obviously a part of that. This does utilize $1,376,000 of street fund balance, which again, this is a restricted fund. Those funds are used for street and drainage improvements. We do build up the fund balance and use it for street projects and for street equipment replacement. So on the next slide, you'll see how they're intending to use some of those funds. They have transfers out planned of $2,488,000. And so some of that excess, or some of the street fund balance, will be utilized for the vehicle and equipment replacement, the LED street light retrofits, continuation of the reentry sidewalk and right-of-way program, and these other items that are listed here. On the next slide, we'll go into the waste disposal. The rate study is underway. There are no rate increases anticipated here except for the pass-through of the increase in the recycling contract that's expected to begin in April. The estimated cost of that is $615,000, and that's the primary driver between the increase in the sanitation fees on line 1. The reduction in miscellaneous revenue of $1.2 million In the 2018 budget, they had part of their vehicle replacement strategy was to sell back vehicles and replenish those with new vehicles on a rotating schedule. Due to the addition of the additional waste disposal crew and the need for retaining that equipment in order to have equipment available for the crew, we do not anticipating selling anything back this year. So we will not have that revenue this year. On the next slide, you see their expenses. The fleet fuel and services expenses, that is a combination of the change in the fuel rate along with the increase in the vehicle, insurance contract that y'all approved tonight with the municipal league. Our insurance for vehicles went up substantially, and it was primarily due to some fires we had on our waste disposal equipment. The contract increase of $613,000, $615,000 of that is that recycling pass-through. And then their depreciation and amortization, that increase has to do with the equipment that they've purchased in the last few years with the replenishment of the equipment, so they have new equipment that's being depreciated. So the waste disposal fund is budgeted on a full GAAP, generally accepted accounting principle basis. So there are non-cash expenses like depreciation and amortization that are included in this budget. There is a loss of $2.2 million anticipated in the waste disposal fund, and again, a big part of that is the fact that they're not selling back that vehicle this year, those vehicles. But when you take out the non-cash items and you put back in some of the cash that's not reflected in the income statement, which includes the principal portion of their bond payments, capital purchases, it's just a little bit more from a cash needs than about $128,000 more expenses than what's reflected here. So again, they're going to be using about $2.2 million. We do have a rate study underway. And then on the next slide, you'll see the transfers that are anticipated. So their transfers really haven't changed too much. The allocation to the general fund for overhead is just based on a combination of the number of employees and the amount of expenditures. So really transfers out are pretty comparable. On the next slide is our fleet services fund budget. It's an increase of $1.6 million in revenue, and that is, directly passed through to the other departments. This is an internal service fund, so its primary customer is the city. So again, the increases have to do with the vehicle insurance increased rate and with increased fuel prices. They are anticipating unleaded fuel will be at $2.50 per gallon. In our 2018 budget, that was $2.20. Diesel fuel $2.60. It was $2.30 in last year's budget, and then 70 cents for CNG compared to 77 or 7.7. That may be a typo. It may be 77 in last year's budget. But right now we're seeing a brief decline in fuel rates. We have visited with Fleet Services about that, and based on the forecast they're seeing, they actually did bring their rates down from where we started in the budget process, but they were not comfortable bringing them down any further for this initial budget. On the next slide, you see the expenses that offset that revenue. So, again, the contracts has to do with the increase in the insurance, and then you can see the fuel and the supplies for parts and all. There is a transfer out from there. We're planning on using $728,000 in fund balance that had accumulated in the fleet service fund. But again, this is an internal service fund, so that's generated from internal billings, which means for one reason or another, they basically overcharged. And so we're giving a credit back to the general fund. That's one of the transfers in of $750,000 in this budget. And finally, our vehicle storage budget. We've had a really good year for vehicle storage. There's been an increased number of vehicles available for auction, and that has increased the charges for services. And so we are anticipating approximately $500,000 in net income. And I guess one more, our River Market Garage Fund on the next slide. And these are our revenues for operating both the convention center and the garage and the River Market Garage. And we're anticipating net income of $596,000, but due to the bond rater's new method, we're going to leave that $359,000 in the fund this year. We may not do that on an ongoing basis, but we needed to build up the cash coverage for bond purposes. So that concludes the initial draft of your budget.
All right, thank you very much, Sarah. Questions, Director Wright, you're first, please.
Thank you. I want to go back to page 2 on the code enforcement officers. How many officers do we have right now, Mr. Moore?
38. They're all filled.
They're all filled. Okay. I've asked previously about a salary increase for them, and I know we're not doing it in this budget, but what is your plan to review their situation?
Sure. Right now, HR is doing an analysis of where we stand in the state, and then also want to look at comparable cities. And once I get that analysis, I'll be bringing something back before the board. But one of the things that you struggle with is when you do this sort of cross-the-board increase of a category of employees, one, when no one else is getting a raise for next year, non-uniform, and then, and I'm not necessarily talking about code enforcement, but when you have a category of employees, whether it's 10 or 30, and they're not all performing at the same level, and some are on or sort of in their probationary period because of something that had happened. So it's something that I struggle with, but I know it's a tough job. We've been able to do some one-time things for them, but I plan on coming back in 2019 with some concrete recommendations.
And also as to whether or not the staffing that we have is sufficient.
Correct.
Okay. All right. Then, moving on over to some notes. The budget for parks. I had noted that you were saying we had to make some cuts to get the budget balanced by the end of the year. And as I understand it, I'm looking at this page. If I can ever get back over there to it. There it is, on page 28. The original budget for parks was $10,637,313, and it looks like you reduced it to $10,307,532, but it's back up to $10,613, which changed by $306,330.
The reduction, the 10. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Yeah. So remember, we talked about this before, but we think it's important to show the amended budget. Mm-hmm. So if you look at that number, 10.3, 10.6. Now it's pretty much at the same as 10.6 for the 2019 budget.
The amended was reduced for the vacancy savings that happened during the year when they had vacant positions, and that's why it's down. It's because you move it out of that $6.5 million line where you don't know where it's going to be as positions are vacant, and you reduce their personnel budget. So you can see that the decrease is in their personnel budget. So they had about $329,000 in vacancy savings. that reduced their budget in 2018. And so this budget anticipates, starting again at the budget for all of their positions as if they're filled. And then if there are vacant positions, it'll get reduced as well as the pay periods go on.
Okay. Well, the reason I'm asking is because at the new community center, we have several needs. And Mr. Moore, there was never any protection purchased for the floor, which was a tarp. There was never the entrance sign, the monument sign was never installed on the Colonel Glenn side. The entrance sign on the Barrow side is not sufficient. Matter of fact, according to your policy, it doesn't even meet the standard that it should have met. And if that budget is back where it stays like it was in 2018, then the money should be in that budget in order for these things to get taken care of.
Well, right. Remember, as we talk about, this is amended budget comparison. Also, all of those items that you just referred to are in capital nature and wouldn't be. This is the operating budget. So, as I've mentioned to you before, as we identify these projects, we'll try to identify funding. As you know, when we opened the center, we put in a new sign about, I think it cost about $25,000 then. And so it's just a matter of identifying the capital needs, which we have throughout the city, and trying to match up funding.
Okay.
And as you know, we've got some capital money for parks, but it's for the entire park system, obviously.
So if you save money in your operating budget, what happens to that operating budget?
It goes toward our bottom line and if we end up in the black, we bring that back to the board, and those dollars usually go into into our reserve contingency fund.
So if there's savings there, you're telling me that money can't be used to make the improvements that are needed at that center.
I didn't say that. What I'm saying is what you're looking at is the operating budget. All of those items are capital of nature. So as we've identified those projects that need to be addressed, we're going to address them. It's a brand new $6 million community center. I'm just saying that they're not included in what you're looking at right here as a 10.6.
So what goes on the gym floor is a part of your capital, is what you're saying.
Correct.
So if you don't have protection for the gym floor and you want to have activities in there that are going to damage the floor, are you going to approve those activities to take place?
Well, I think you know that once we were made aware of an activity that was potentially going to take place in the gym floor, and we found out that it could potentially harm the floor, we postponed it, or I can't remember, we got some tarp or something. But we know, we have tarp I know we have it at Dunbar. I don't know if it's out Southwest, but again, that's a capital item. We have the list from the departments and of the needs, and as dollars come available from the capital side, we'll try to address those.
So I just want to be clear. None of the savings that are generated from any positions or any other savings that are generated at that center, none of that can be used to take care of the needs that are existing.
Again, the operating, it's a totally different...
That clarifies that. Thank you. Regarding the outside agencies, what page? On page 32, on the Museum of Discovery. As you know, I ended up working with the Innovation Hub. I had tried to get a meeting set up with the Museum of Discovery, and I was never able to meet with anyone there. So I ended up working with the Museum of Innovation Hub on the STEM summer program that we did, the Summer STEAM. So we're giving Museum of Discovery $230,000, but I wasn't even able to get a meeting set up that would explain to me what the kids in the summer program that we were doing last summer were able to benefit from the Museum of Discovery. Can you explain to me what we get for this $230,000?
Sure.
And also, who owns this?
We own it.
Okay.
And obviously, they provide programming for Little Rock youth based on our contractual agreement that we have with them. And when those things come up, that's just a call to me or somebody to say, hey, can we get a meeting set up? Here's some of my interest.
Mhm.
This is the first I've heard of that.
That's why I ended up working with the Innovation Hub. They were more interested in coming over and working with.
Which that worked. I mean, that
It worked
actually
out.
worked, yeah.
It worked out, but it was quite disconcerting to know that we're giving this kind of money and we actually do own the Museum of Discovery.
Correct.
Okay, so I'll be letting you know about some things I want to get done. I think you answered all of my other questions. Oh, Heritage Ballpark on page 36. That's the grant match. What is that a particular? What grant is that?
The city typically does, and you can see Heritage on here a few times, or at least twice. We typically do apply for Heritage grants. We've done one for the Oakland Fraternal Cemetery. So these are just potential grant opportunities that we feel pretty good about.
I'd like Union Park added in there as well. That park right now is not usable. The pavilion is closed off, and I get calls from people wanting to know when we're going to fix that up. And on page 40, on the right-of-way program, how many workers do we have in that? How many is that covered? I know we reduced it.
I don't think we reduced it.
You had 250 in the amended, and it's down to 200,000. So how many workers will that be?
Yeah, let me get that answered for you. I don't have that right in front of me.
Okay, and I think that is pretty much all I had. What is Johnson Controls, Mr. Moore?
It's a agreement that it's probably been in place for 15, 20 years.
Before my time.
Yeah, where they came in and retrofitted, for instance, most of City Hall, and the savings that we would get, we were supposed to get a check from them on an annual basis. So that's just the agreement with Johnson on the LED lighting installation.
Okay, that's all I got. Thank you.
Director Campiris.
Sarah.
Go ahead.
When you talk about, you said, I believe, that personnel were 75% of our budget. Is that correct?
Yes.
What was that last year?
I don't have the number in front.
That's pretty consistent. 74, 75%, 3/4.
Slightly, but it's not too much.
But it's maybe up slightly, but it's about that.
Right.
Okay. You said 5 or 6 times we were transferring in money from X places. Could you go over one by one where they're coming from?
I have some of them on the top of my head. I don't have the entire list. As we mentioned, $750,000 is coming from the fleet fund. We have.
And then when you do that, tell me what the consequences are of taking them out of that.
That's money that should be returned to the general fund. The issue is it's not recurring revenue. It's not something we can count on in future years.
But I think when we talk about transfer, I mean, it's the old Peter and Paul thing.
In some cases, the transfers are designed to, because, for example, the city attorney's office, HR, finance that processes all the payroll and the payments, we're all paid from general fund departments. A lot of the negotiation for contracts are for public works contracts or for the waste disposal fund. And so there are some allocations there. Those transfers are recurring. They happen every year, and there's a calculation that determines what that is.
But what percentage of our over $200 million comes from transfers, and what do they do to the entity we're transferring from?
The total transfer in budget, let me see, is $8,229,000. About $3 million of that, and I'm sorry I don't have my transfers in page in front of me right now, but
I tell you what, why don't you by next?
I would be happy to
have
Six?
what?
Page 37.
That's transfers out.
Well, you get the revenue on the front end of it.
Yeah, that there are things that are transferred in, and then there's things that are transferred out. So the transfers in is accumulated from different sources, and for example, one of them is like from that 3/8 fund when we advanced all those short-term financing notes. That pays the principal portion on the notes, and that's about $3 million. And so that gets reduced as a note rolls off, but it's directly offset by debt service expense. So
Well,
that
if you could just, I mean, this is $8 million is a lot of money to off the top of your head.
Yeah.
The second thing is when you talk about vacancy savings, and Doris was talking about with the Parks Department, and Bruce said that we had so much in vacancy savings in this fiscal year. When that occurs, are we freezing those positions to maintain to achieve vacancy savings, or are we not able to fill those positions?
It depends on the position. There are some positions that we definitely fill. Public safety positions are an example. There are other positions that the city manager evaluates one at a time. He may freeze the position, he may approve the position. But I want to make sure you understand, when we budget personnel, we are budgeting it at 100%. You know
Right, that's what I want to get at. You budget 100%, and then as the year goes on.
Well, the vacancy savings is a direct offset, and so that equates to us budgeting approximately 95% of the personnel cost.
Right, but my point is that as we go along, like this year, we had our revenues were not what we thought, so vacancy savings then became a mechanism for making up some of that shortfall.
It was definitely harder to get positions approved to be filled.
Okay.
Yes.
The third thing is that when you were talking about decrease in the number of people in departments, in the attorney's office, we went from 20 to 18 positions.
They stayed the same.
Yeah, there's been no reduction there.
I think they stayed the same.
No,
they had reduced previously, but this year between 18 and 19 they stayed the same. The reduction to expenses in the city attorney's office was because we had that one-time case management software that was included in the budget amendment.
No. Look at number of bodies in the department.
Let me find. All right.
Page 29.
29. Okay. So they were 18 in 2018, and they're 18 now. They were 20 in 2017. That reduction happened last year.
Well, it is my recollection that we have asked that go back to what it was before. Is that not right?
No, the last request, and Tom can correct me if I'm wrong, but was to add an attorney that would focus on lien foreclosures, and that was a pretty clear direction from the board, and that position was added, but
we cut an investigator's position, and we cut the paralegal position that we finally got granted.
And then the last question is, we put $1.2 million in our reserve fund.
1.1.
1.1.
That's the contingency allocation, so that it doesn't go directly to that restricted reserve. It's the contingency allocation that's available should any of our forecasts not come out exactly where it should be. If we have an unforeseen need, or if we have a reduction in revenue, this is built into the budget in order to help us balance in the current year without having to go to reserves or to the restricted reserve.
So it's when you're building the house, that's that extra they tell you you're going to.
Well, and we actually have it required in our budget, or in our ordinance, we're required to have 0.5% of the revenue budget as a contingency.
So then it goes back to our, not our rainy day fund, but our
Restricted reserve.
Right. Where are we right now on that? And when's the last time we funded that?
I believe it was year before last, and it is now $10 million. $10 million.
And what's it supposed to be? It's supposed to be 10% of our budget,
The
right?
goal was to get to 10 million and then gradually build it to 10%. Yes. So we got to the 10 million. That was the first hurdle. We haven't made it to 10%.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Well, that. Oh, I'm sorry, Director Fortson. Did you have a? Just go ahead and hit your. I'm sorry. I didn't see that on there. Go ahead,
Sarah. I'm sorry I couldn't get my microphone on time. Stop you from walking back. Is it fair to say the transfers in that Director Capuris referred to are in many cases from accumulated internal funds? For example, the fleet services dollar amount is from charges for services that had built up over a period of time, and some of the others. But is it a fair statement that were those transfers not available, you're looking at an $8 million shortfall in revenue to meet the operating budget you have right now?
We would be looking at a much larger shortfall, yes.
That's right. So,
but some of those transfers, like I said, are directly offset by an expense, and they stay even. So it's not the entire transfer balance that is.
And I seem to recall a couple of occasions in past years where, as we got into midsummer squeezes, we've had to transfer additional funds from things like the street fund in order to make it through the year. Is that a correct memory?
We don't ever transfer street fund money to general fund operations, because that's restricted for
I use
things.
that as a poor example. Yeah. We use some other transfers to make operations.
We did it back in the years of the recession.
I was thinking back
with waste disposal and fleet. And one of the things I meant to say this when Dr. Pierce was talking, transfers in is not new or unique to 2019. That's typically how we've been budgeting for quite some time.
Well, and again, some of those are recurring. They're not all one time.
Well, and I know both Bruce and Mark said that the income projections are conservative, but I think the obvious point, and we might disagree on whether 1.5 will be there, because I'm not too sure anybody's crystal ball is that accurate on 2019. But the point being that the budget you have proposed still does not have room for very many hiccups and very many radical changes without additional money coming from somewhere or something being cut out.
But and I might add, it also presumes no salary increase or cost of living adjustment for your non-uniform employees too, which, from a management standpoint is not a very, that's a very tough thing to do, to let some receive it and others that do not. So
that was my other point, Mayor, is that that it austere may be too strong a word, but it is certainly a very tight budget, and there's some assumptions like some fee increases, some other things that are purely educated assumptions at this point in time, and any sharp turn in any direction, we'd have some budget crunches early.
Director Wright.
Yeah, follow-up question, Mr. Moore. Where is the capital improvement line item, and how much is in there? What page is that on?
It's not in there. This is just the operating budget from the general fund. With each department, you all saw their wish list at the inventory work session. That's the capital list there. It's just how do you fund it? And for instance, and I think Sarah mentioned this earlier, and the mayor, we didn't recommend any reduction in IT, and that's mainly because of the increases in just maintenance costs, security costs. These aren't additional staff members. These are just ongoing maintenance costs that you got to have in place.
Where does your capital improvement funds come from?
Mainly from the 3/8 cent, but it has to sort of fall under what we said we were going to do. Not sort of, it does fall under. That's our capital budget.
Okay, so you said that, we said in our resolution that we passed that to build the community center that we would build a pool. We didn't get that. Okay, every building should have proper signage so people know what they're turning into when they turn off the street. So these are relatively minor things, other than rather than talking about the pool right now, which I know, according to what you say, we can't get it. Which next time my constituents ask me about it, I'm going to give them your phone number. But at the proper signage, the tarp for the floor, the monument sign on Colonel Glenn, all of these things should have been done. So I'm asking you, where would these funds come from? You're saying the 3/8 of an inch sales tax. So I want to know when we can get that.
Okay. And I'll follow up with a time frame.
Thank you.
Director Computers.
Two things. One is an easy one. It is the Christmas time of the year, and what our tradition has been is to give Bruce some money to give to the people who need it in our organization. Whatever you want to give to Bruce. That's one. Mark, I am to say I'm shocked that the jail has given us notice that a year from now they're going to do it on a per person entrance is, first of all, it's in my business, bad news comes all the time, but I like to know it in advance. And I'm a little surprised that this is the way we heard about it, in all honesty. But, 4 or 5 years ago when we had the fight with Buddy Valines about this, we looked at some contingencies about how we were going to do the jail and what we were going to do. And we need to pull those out and start looking at them real seriously, because all it's going to take is whatever we get back on the internet sales, sometime we're going to get hit with a big increase in our health insurance, and we're not going to be able to pay 100% of our employees' insurance and then 60% of their families. And we're not going to be able to take care of the jail with $2 or $3 or $4 million. And I don't care what the internet sales tax goes up, we're going to be in the hole, and we're going to go up 2.5% in salary to fire and police. So we better start figuring out right now what we're going to do about that jail, and not till at the end of 2019. That is a hell of a big issue that we need to start addressing right now.
It is, and I will. If you think getting bad news a year in advance is something, we had an Intergovernmental Cooperation Council meeting without an agenda given to us, and the budget was given to us saying it was going to go into effect for 2019. And I was very agitated, is a mild word for it. All the mayors were there, and I really was very upset with the situation. Let me put it like that. And apparently they didn't read the contract very accurately, because about 3 hours later, after the meeting had adjourned, we got a call and said, "Oh, we misread the contract. The contract doesn't expire until 2019." So, but their intention was to put it in place this year, and they told us that like in the middle of October. So, there was a case out of and I don't want to belabor the point. I know everybody's tired. There was a case out of Jonesboro that helped to define what a city prisoner was, and when we get tagged in for the cost of that, and that is what has dictated this. I predict it's going to be something that spreads throughout all of the county jails, and so the municipal league is all over it, trying to work on how we can be able to do something about it. So, well, if I know that everybody will be kept informed on it.
Yeah, if I remember correctly, our issue before, BJ, wasn't it, is whether their obligation is to take the prisoners.
Well, it is,
and we need to start looking into that now and our legal situation in this as we look forward. I mean,
the issue is they're obligated to take them, but now the court, and it's been decided by the Arkansas Supreme Court, has decided that at what juncture the county has to pay for it or the state has to pay for it, as opposed to the cities. And it's when the filing of the felony information is filed in circuit court. And we don't need to get into a big, I mean, having been the prosecutor, I can tell you a lot about that. We don't need to get into that tonight, but there's a substantial amount of time between arrest and when the filing happens, and that's the window that the cities are now going to be obligated to pay for. So anything that can be done to shorten that window up will be to our benefit. The one final thing I would like to say is that in addition to the Wayfair case, there are two other major issues, and Sarah and I have talked about this, and that's the artificial cap on our 1.5% sales tax on major purchases. We only get 1.5 pennies on the first $2,500 of a purchase. Somebody goes out and buys a car, the state gets their 6.5% on a $60,000 car. We get $37.50 on the purchase of that car, and that's just wrong. It's just plain wrong. The other thing is, when we passed our sales tax, we were at 0.5 penny, and the state takes an administrative fee of 3%. They took 3% on that 0.5 penny. When we passed another penny, 1.5 pennies, they took the 3% on the whole 1.5 pennies. So, and they had no additional work, no additional employees. I've been told there's only 2 employees that handle the administrative cost of remitting back the tax to the cities. And that's another issue. Both of those are part of the AML package, but I mean, I can tell you it'll be a big fight, but add that to the list of issues that you want to talk to your legislators about. So, okay, Director Adcock, you're next.
Bruce, I would like to know how much would it cost these employees that are not getting a raise under the unions to get a 1 or 2% raise? If you can give me that figure, please.
I can give it to you all now, because this isn't an easy recommendation. We've had to do this before, where we had a contract in place, but for non-uniform, it's about $1 million a percent, close to.
If we gave a bonus, because I remember one year we did do bonuses, I believe. If we gave a bonus, how much what was the bonus we gave last time?
It depended on your salary level, and the lower, and this is something that was very important to me, the lower employees saw more of their bonus than people making $50,000 and more. It's sort of a tiered approach.
Remember what the lowest was? Was it 150?
I think it might have been about 200, but
and how much did that cost us?
I just have to go back. I think it was around $750,000.
Well, I know that you have worked on this, and I appreciate that, but I would really like for us to be able to give the employees something. If we can't give them, the whole 1%, if we could come up with the $750, and I think if we all looked very hard on this budget, maybe we could come up with some other things that we could do away with. But to not give an employee who has worked all year something, whenever you're giving 3 groups of people something. You was talking a minute ago about taking one group like the code officers and giving them. Well, to me, that's the same way that we're doing. We're taking 3 groups of people and giving them something, and the other group. So I would like for you to go back and look to see.
The number one thing on my list, and you just mentioned it, but was estimate a bonus for non-uniform employees. So it bothers me tremendously when we have to do this, but I think the board also understands the fiscal constraints we're under. But
I do, but I'm glad to know that you and I are thinking alike. But Mayor, I have one other thing. I'd like to pass this out. This is one reason I ask us to relook at the rental inspection, because there's one class of people that, although they are, Tom would say, covered by rental inspection, we don't enforce it, because as Mr. Sims told me today, if we enforce rental inspection on the mobile home parks that we do on the apartment complex, we would have 99% of them closed down. But we have to start doing something with the mobile home parks. We've gone tours out there, Mr. Moore and a group of us, and something's got to be done to clean them up. So in the rental inspection, I wanted to go back and look at mobile home parks. How can we start doing something? There is 3,146 mobile homes registered with the city of Little Rock, and that is probably around 90% of the ones we had. I can remember when we had about 25 or 30 mobile home parks. Now we have 116, and 75% of those are in southwest Little Rock. So that's one reason I had asked to hold the rental inspection, because I would like for us to look at all rental property, including the mobile home parks. So if we can't do as much as we do on apartments, we need to do something.
All right. Director Wyrick.
Thank you, Mayor. We've mentioned Municipal League a couple of times tonight, and usually we know what the package is that's going to be introduced at the Capitol, and I don't recall seeing that package. Seen it? Is that why you're smiling?
Yeah, you all passed a resolution and detailing our package, because remember we try to get it in the league package, and they meet in the summer. So I'll resend the list that you all endorsed, and they're all in the league package.
I don't recall getting that. Does anybody else recall getting it?
Yeah,
I mean, you all vote. It was
we did.
We voted on it. Okay.
And the Municipal League sent you an invitation to a regional meeting. That was
Can
held
I get
last
a copy of
week.
it, please?
Yeah, we'll resend a memo, and I might say you voted on it, but I know we sent it out, and when we present it, if no one's against a particular item, then it goes forward. But we'll send it out.
Thank you.
All right.
Yeah, they have their booklet. We'll present that. They have all the cities, and we'll get a copy of each board member.
All right, Vice Mayor Webb.
Thank you. To follow up with what Director Wyrick said, I know, I understand that if we meet with the legislators in the Little Rock area, that the press has to be invited because of FOIA laws. But at one point, we used to get together and do that, and at least it's a way to have a conversation and talk to them face to face and that kind of thing. So I'm wondering why we can't do that. But second of all, I would like to move to recess till next week.
All right, there's a motion and a second to recess this meeting until December 11th. All in favor indicate by saying aye. Opposed say nay. We're in recess. Thank you.